Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with John Layfield. John, what's going on, man?
Not too much, Conrad. How you doing?
Man, better than I deserve. Excited for a big week. One of the biggest weeks of wrestling in the entire year. Of course, we're getting things kicked off tonight with a live Monday Night Raw on Netflix. Of course, we've got a big NXT show on Tuesday. Wednesday, a Dynamite. Thursday, a Collision. Friday, StarCast and Ring of Honor. And, of course, Saturday, John, you and I are going to have a blast at StarCast. Grab your bracelets right now. Join John and I in Dallas. They're on sale now at STARRCAST.com. Not only when you grab a bracelet will you get seating for our panels, but in addition to that, you're going to get first access and first dibs for a Hall of Fame lineup. I mean, really, a who's who of professional wrestling will be there on both Friday and Saturday. Not just the stars of today, but how about the legends of yesteryear? How about this panel that John's going to be hosting with Stan Hansen and Kevin Von Erich and Dory Funk Jr., all the Texas legends live and on stage. And we've just announced a Lucha panel as well with the owner of CMLL. Man, this really is the place to be, and it's happening this Friday and Saturday in Arlington, Texas at the Sheraton. Now, I want to remind you, the Ring of Honor pay-per-view is on Saturday night. It's in the same parking lot as our hotel. You don't have to go very far. And on Saturday, how far away are you from the stadium where the big pay-per-view is happening? 2 blocks. So if you've been to a WrestleMania in New Orleans before, this is going to feel similar. You can sort of navigate and walk around and check it out. But it's going to be a who's who this weekend. John, I know this is almost going to be like a class reunion for you. How pumped are you for Dallas?
I am absolutely thrilled. I think it was Pete Rose one time. He was talking about being backstage and listening to a bunch of old legends, and I forget who all was there that day that he was talking about it. But Pete Rose had one of the coolest things to say. He said, this is like sitting back if you were in my world and listening to Babe Ruth and Joe DiMaggio and Mickey Mantle. And I thought it's so cool the way he put it. But that's exactly what this panel is. These are our Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, Joe D. I mean, this is it for us. You got a Von Erich, you got a Hansen, you got a Funk, you got a Rhodes, all in one single panel. I can't wait for this.
I'm fired up. Grab your bracelets right now. I've got some tricks up my sleeve you don't want to miss. That's starcast.com. Grab a bracelet. And hey, we just announced something over the weekend. Maybe it was Friday, maybe it was Thursday. I forget, but it was right before the holiday, John. If you grab a bracelet, you're automatically entered for what I think is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and experience. You're going to be guaranteed an opportunity to upgrade your regular seat into a ringside floor seat. Not only that, but you'll also be able to go backstage after the big pay-per-view. You're going to sit front row at the press conference, and immediately following the pay-per-view, you're going to get a personal meet and greet with Tony Khan. That's something you can't buy. You can't find anywhere else. You don't have to buy a ticket for it. All you got to do is grab a bracelet, come enjoy yourself at StarCast, and one lucky person is going to get a backstage tour after the biggest AEW stadium show in American history. And I think it's a pretty cool opportunity. I hope that you'll join us, make plans to join us. And you even see the black hat hanging off the tee if you're watching with us on YouTube. Yeah, JR is back, and he's going to be doing pro photo ops at an AEW announce desk. That's happening for the first time ever. You could sit next to good old JR and get your picture made with Jim Ross. How cool is that? That's got to be one of the coolest photo ops of all time. Don't you think, John?
Oh, 100%. I keep using analogies of other sports, but that's the only thing I can compare it to. I got to be on a tribute one time with Nolan Ryan, and I watched him pitch so many times when I was a kid. I was a big Texas Ranger fan. That's the only thing I can see equivalent to this. But to me, I'm a huge wrestling fan. I grew up watching the Funks, the Von Erich, Stan Hansen. I mean, this is Dusty. This is really cool to be able to go and meet these incredible legends, and not only meet with them, but interact with them. Interact with them in a way that's personal. I mean, this is stuff you'll remember the rest of your life.
Come join us. StarCast.com is the place to be. And, of course, that night, you and I have never talked about this. Have you ever sat down and had a chance to watch Kenny Omega and Okada in their New Japan trilogy? Have you seen any of those matches before, John?
No, I haven't. No, but I would love to. Not because I don't. I just hadn't watched a ton of extra wrestling, but I'd love to.
Well, I can't wait to see what you think happening Saturday night. If you're a hardcore wrestling fan, you know that these guys have a great trilogy. Okada's got one win. Omega's got another. The third is a draw. I know as a rule, we don't typically talk about this sort of thing on Something to Wrestle. But this match, I feel like it sort of transcends. So even if you haven't seen it, John, you're at least familiar with it. You've heard of this one. I mean, this is
100%. And I can't wait to watch it. I mean, these guys have just lit up the world, and I've seen a lot of their clips, and so I have seen a lot of what they do. I know exactly who they are, know exactly what their style is, all that. I have not seen the full matches, so I'm excited to watch this. You got to see this, to understand, because there's so much buzz about these guys that it's one of these things you have to tune in just to see what the buzz is.
I can't wait to see it. And of course, there's a lot of buzz about what's happening Saturday night. And we are going to be talking about this and recapping it next week here on Something to Wrestle. Of course, we're talking about the return of Goldberg. He's going to be headlining Saturday night's main event live from Atlanta, the same town that made him famous. He played college ball, of course, at Georgia. He was on the Falcons on the NFL side of things. And then he goes to the power plant and joins WCW, all based in Atlanta. But perhaps most famously, just yesterday, John, was the anniversary of him beating Hulk Hogan at the Georgia Dome for the world title. You were, of course, knee-deep in WWE at the time. We're going to talk about some of that next week here on the program. But I do want to get your take. What do you expect to happen this weekend at Saturday night's main event? I bring this up because WWE's running it back with Saturday night's main event and Evolution, and MyBookie actually has odds on every match, John. And Gunther's a heavy favorite over Goldberg. But stranger things have happened in that ring, and I think Rollins and LA Knight are hooking up. The crowd's clearly behind Knight, but he's still like a 350 underdog, with Seth being positioned as the main guy for WWE. TNA's Jordan Grace is looking to shock JC Jane for the NXT title. And if you've been watching, you already know where the value is hiding on that one. And at MyBookie, you're not just betting winners, you're betting entrances, turns, shock wins, and getting paid when you read the story right. Sign up with the code WRESTLE50 and we'll back you on your first deposit. Yeah, $100 gets you 50 extra. $200 gets you a Benjamin. What you do with it is up to you. 2 shows, 1 weekend. Bet smart, cash in, only at MyBookie. Now, again, I want to say loudly and clearly here, John and I have no inside information.
Correct.
But they have not called this Goldberg's last match. So it does make me think Goldberg's going to win the damn title. What do you think?
I think he's got a shot.
Yeah.
The whole thing looks like a cascading effect. You take the title off of Jey Uso and put it on Gunther so you have a really good heel. Because Goldberg against the babyface would not be as appealing, but you got this wonderful heel in Gunther, a guy who can do anything and certainly make Goldberg look good. Not that Goldberg needs it, by the way. I mean, Goldberg was the one star that was kicking our ass that WCW created. I mean, when he beat Hogan, the anniversary is just shortly apart from what we are today. I mean, that they were kicking our ass, and Goldberg was a huge reason. And Goldberg, it's not a matter of Goldberg putting on 30-minute matches. He's not going to do that. Goldberg's going to do certain very violent things that he does very well. He can do that at age 58. I think it's going to be very entertaining.
If I could armchair quarterback it, I would think that if this was indeed Goldberg's last match, maybe that would be an opportunity for Seth Rollins to cash in and steal one. Maybe Jay calls Gunther or something like that, and Gunther's pissed and takes it out on Goldberg after the bell or what have you. And that's when we would get a cash in. But since they haven't called it his last match officially, I'm wondering, do they wait and do that in Saudi, do you think? Like if you had the book, would you do something different with Goldberg this weekend?
Other than Gunther going over?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah, 100%. You got to understand, people that talk about it, and look, it's just their opinion. And I'm not taking shots at them personally. I'm taking shots at their opinion because my opinion is different. People that take shots at Goldberg saying he doesn't deserve to be there. Did Muhammad Ali deserve to fight Larry Holmes?
Right.
100% he did. He's freaking Muhammad Ali. This is freaking Goldberg. I mean, here's a guy who was 176-0. Now, was that manufactured number? Yes, it was, because he go from 20-0 to 42-0 the next week, which is a statistical impossibility unless he's wrestling twice a night. But who cares? That you're going through the weeds here, picking stuff up that you want to pick apart. Goldberg is one of the biggest stars in the history of this business, and I know people are going to want to fight me over that. That's fine. That's my opinion. He is. WCW created him, and when he got hot, he was unbelievable how hot he was. Does he deserve to be in this match? Yes, absolutely. If he's 68, he deserves to be in this match. And I think the match is going to be good. He came back and he didn't wrestle a lot the last 20 years. The matches he's had have been pretty good. He came back and worked with Brock, and he came back working with Taker. Of course, he had the concussion. That was a big issue. But the matches he had were good because what he does is certain violent things, with an exclamation point on me and let him go, what the fuck was that? That's Goldberg. And so I think he deserves to be there. And would I do something with Goldberg here? Yes. You want to create some buzz, do something different with Goldberg than just Gunther going over.
I got to say, give some props to WWE. They really have given NBC Universal a lot of value. I think they're in a contract year. I think their contract I think I've read that reported that they're coming due soon. Maybe it's at the end of the year or at some point here in the near future that NBC Universal / Peacock deal comes to an end. But man, it does feel like with them showcasing so much of John Cena in his final year and now a return for Goldberg for a title shot in Atlanta, it feels like they've delivered a lot of value. Let's talk about the business of professional wrestling here for a minute, John. Do you think that WWE and Peacock will keep the band together? Or do you think this might be the end of WWE and the NBC relationship?
It's all about money. I mean, WWE is the ultimate mercenary. And I think it's more so true today. I mean, Vince McMahon was the ultimate mercenary. You see what he would do. He'd go from Spike TV, go to USA. He would try out different networks. Vince did a ton of different things, tried a ton of different shows, but very much it was Machiavellian. Whoever paid the most money and had the best opportunity, they would go to. There's not a lot of loyalty, and there shouldn't be in things like this. And so if they stay, it's because there's a good money deal. If they leave, it's because of a better money deal. And I've been amazed when you talk about how much they've been producing for them. I've been amazed. The depth of their roster is the best probably in the history of wrestling as far as talent from top to bottom. And for one thing, back in the Attitude Era, we didn't have a women's roster. We had women, but they weren't their own roster. And so you have double basically the roster that you had from the Attitude Era, which helps a lot because now women are just as important as men as they should be, and they can headline WrestleManias or anything on their own just as the same as men. They draw based upon attraction of whoever that talent is. And because of that, you've got this incredible deep roster. And WWE has been, I think, absolutely over-delivering. That was an old Vince McMahon mantra, was always under-promise and always over-deliver. And they've been over-delivering with everybody. So if they stay, I think it's because Peacock opened up more of their wallet. And if they leave, it's going to somebody else open up their wallet. It's going to be very much a mercenary type event, which that's good for wrestling.
No doubt. I'm all for it. I can't wait to see what happens this weekend. I know that you're a big fan of laying a little money on the line. I know you're going to be using MyBookie for WWE action this weekend. But
how great is that you can bet on wrestling?
I love it so much, dude.
I love it.
I do want to ask, to use a different sports term, we would sometimes bet in boxing or in the UFC, hey, what round will it finish in? That sort of thing. I think one of the unique things about Goldberg is he was always positioned as Mike Tyson. We had Kevin Sullivan with us a few years ago, Lord rest in peace. But he mentioned that he was really trying to channel Mike Tyson in the way he positioned Goldberg. He had the short black boots, and of course he had the black trunks, and he even wore gloves to the ring. And I think a lot of people thought, well, he's a Stone Cold ripoff. But even with like knocking on the door and seeing that entrance through the back and all of that, it did really feel a lot like Mike Tyson. And I think if you were to ask any boxing fan who lived through peak Mike Tyson, they would tell you they didn't really want to see Mike Tyson fight for 5 or 10 or 12 rounds. They wanted to see Mike Tyson knock somebody out fast. And that's what Goldberg delivered to wrestling fans. And I know in the modern era, John, this current generation of fans and performers, they really prioritize in-ring work and work rate. And you hear buzzwords like that thrown around. Goldberg was an attraction, a Mike Tyson-like attraction. So I'm asking all that to say, if they're really going to give us what we want in Goldberg, how long do you think this match goes Saturday? Is this 2 minutes? Is this 3 minutes? Is it 6 minutes? It's not long, is it?
It's not going over 10.
Yeah.
I'll take the under on 10. I might take the under on 5 from bell to bell. And I certainly would probably take it around. I think it would probably be priced around 6 or 7. I think would be my guess if I'm being the bookie here. And I got to see Mike Tyson in person. We were in. Ron was good friends with Hitman Hearns. Is good friends with Hitman Hearns. He invited us up when Tyson fought Galata. When Galata walked out of the ring and freaking caused the riot, we were there. Me and Ron were there. It was unbelievable. But to see Mike Tyson's entrance, I mean, there's nothing like it. And you don't give a shit if he fights one round. Now, you want to see him throw a few punches because he was so violent, but you didn't care. That man would come out, and it was like a ball of fire. It was like Shawn Michaels would come out, back in the 90s or when he returned. The whole arena would change. You see all these other fighters, really good fighters, but then all of a sudden you see Mike Tyson come out with that towel around that he cut a hole out of it, and no shirt, and those black boots with no socks and black trunks. Man, it just looked like, oh my God, here comes a modern day freaking gladiator. That entrance of Mike Tyson was worth the price of admission anywhere in the world. And anybody who was a boxing fan, and I'm a huge boxing fan, a huge Mike Tyson fan, would tell you the same. Now, there's a few boxing purists go, oh, I'd rather watch a bunch of good middleweights. Yeah, because they're fighting for $100 a fight. Yeah, I wouldn't. I'd rather see Mike Tyson come out in a towel and with a little bit of sweat on him and the place just erupts and then him destroy somebody. That to me is fun. And that's Goldberg. I completely agree that Goldberg is very much a replica of a wrestling version of Mike Tyson.
I can't wait to see what happens this weekend. And I got to wonder, you got to think, we saw the last time Goldberg popped up, and maybe that was like 10 years ago. I was under the impression that a lot of that was because his son never really got to see Goldberg. Well, that little boy Gage is now a 19-year-old middle linebacker for Colorado. Like, this is going to be fun to see what happens this weekend. I can't wait for Saturday night's main event. We're going to talk about it next week here on the program. But today our topic is the rise of DX. Before we jump into that, though, I wanted to put a button on something that we talked about last week. We were doing Ask John Anything, and you told a story that was pretty ridiculous about duct taping someone to the ring post. Catch everybody up, because now we've got photographic evidence to share with everyone.
Yeah, and it started with Derek Castleman over the T-shirt in the balls with Chimmel. So there's a video out there of Derek Castleman, Pumpkinhead we called him, because he got a big pumpkin head. Good guy, really good guy. And he would do stuff to Tony Chimmel. It was usually came from Gerald Briscoe in his ear. I don't know if this did or not. This little video got put out that this is what Conrad and John were talking about. It had done, as of today, 1.3 million views of Pumpkinhead shooting a T-shirt gun into Chimmel's balls as Chimmel's doing something in the ring. It's hilarious, and Chimmel absolutely loses it. It's really funny. So Pumpkinhead, me and Gerald Briscoe had to leave and do something like an appearance or something. I can't remember what it was. And we had been joking around with him earlier, and Derek had said something smart ass about us, just making a real, shot ass, like they better be glad they're gone, something like that. We come back, and first thing everybody did was tell us what Derek had said. And I can't remember what it was. It was pretty shitty, but it was funny. It was meant in humor. So we get him in a hall. Briscoe's on one end, I'm on the other, and he looks and he goes, "Oh shit." So we grab him and take him to the ring and duct tape him to the ring post. And so there we are actually duct taping. There's me and Mr. Briscoe duct taping him to the ring post. The middle of the day. You see Teddy Long in the background. They filmed it. This all came from, by the way, from Johnny Photo. Johnny Photo, thank you very much. Love you, Johnny Photo. You are the absolute best. Look at Teddy Long laughing. So we duct taped him. He was fighting pretty hard. We duct taped him to the ring post, but then left him there all day and told everybody, you better not unduct tape him. So he would sit there, and as the guys were practicing, he was shaking with the ring post. And there's Layla putting a cake upon his head. You can see Mr. Briscoe in the background, Kane in the background. I think it's Kevin Fertig back there, Brooke. It was pretty much a company-wide event. There's Mr. Briscoe, very proud of his trophy, like a deer hunter. Deer hunter. There's Stu in the background laughing. Yeah, it was pretty much a company-wide event because everybody knew that we were going to get him when we came back because he didn't know we hadn't left for the day. He thought we had left. He had a week to get away from us. He didn't know we were coming back, and we got him and duct taped him to the ring post. But hey, I want to say this about two people. For one, Derek was the one that sent us this photo. So Derek's a really cool guy. He's a wonderful friend. He sent us this photo. Johnny Photo was the one that had him on all of his he still has all these photos, and Johnny Photo sent them to us. So thank you. Huge kudos to Johnny Photo. It was just another wonderful day at WWE. Apparently, Laurinaitis got mad at Briscoe for us doing it, and he's like tried to yell at Briscoe or something, which didn't work out very well. Something, we'll duct tape you and your skateboard to the freaking highway.
Well, I will say it's interesting that it was Johnny Ace that threw the flag on that, considering everything we know now. But we'll move on.
No shit.
Literally, I do want to mention there is, like, when you were telling the story last week, if you recall, when you finished, I said, "Man, isn't it strange that people call you a bully?" But I will say that when you see the photos and everybody's grinning ear to ear, this really is good-natured hijinks. And I think that served as a teachable moment for me, because there have been stories that are out there where they say, "Oh, and then he did this." And the man, when it's said that way, you think, "Man, that just sounds awful. I can't believe they did that." But then you see photos like this, and literally, including the victim who sent you the photos, it's a fun core memory for everyone. So there's two sides of every story, boys and girls. I thought this was the worst thing ever. And knowing that he sent you the photos because this was a funny story, it's a whole new coat of paint here. Hey, is that Barry Windham on the far right there?
No, I believe it's that's
sure that looks like Barry Windham.
You know what? It's Barry Windham. You're right. Yeah. I just looked at it. I saw this huge guy. I thought it was Kane, but no, it's Barry Windham. Yeah, 100%.
Now, he wasn't an agent with WWE for very long, right?
Right. Yeah, so that's Barry Windham by Mr. Briscoe. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, my God, that's great. And look how Barry is like the seal of approval. Like, he's the agent watching. Of course, Mr. Briscoe is the head agent.
I love it.
There's Layla putting the cake on his face. Yeah, Derek looks like he's really tortured there.
He's just having the worst time ever.
But you're right, though. You tell somebody I duct tape somebody to a ring post and let them know, like you're a horrible person. Okay, I am.
But when you see it, it's like, oh, okay, I was wrong. But you remember, a lot of times, hazing was a thing when I played football. I'm sure it was when you were football. Guys would get duct taped to the goalpost all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And we would hear stories of the Steiners doing this to people. And in more recent times, some of that's been villainized. Oh, they used to tie up this referee, or they would tie up this enhancement guy, or whatever. And it's always said like, oh, this is mean and it's bullying and blah, blah, blah. But knowing this is just guys joking around and having a good time, and everybody's in on the gag, including the perceived victim who sent you the photos to share with everybody here on the show. I don't know. It makes me rethink everything that we've been told in wrestling the last few years.
Yeah, and what was funny was you had guys like Derek and Johnny Photo, and they had their own like crew, and they were always planning to do something to somebody. So they would like come to us, or I don't know if they came just like for advice or like the mechanism to help get it done or something, or approval, which they certainly didn't need. Whatever they came to us for, I don't know, but they would tell us we're going to do this to Chimmel, and we would always like this. That's great. It's wonderful.
I think by now everybody who listens to this show knows that I don't ever do a show without having a format. And so we've got something to reference. So Silva, our producer, knows where we're going. He knows what photos to grab and that sort of thing. Well, every now and again, Silva will have to pop in there and add some notes for me. And he posted at the top today, duct tape story revisited. And then underneath, as the explanation, we now have pictures of that historic day. I don't know why, but I hope that one day this winds up on this day in WWE history. Mr. Briscoe and Mr. Layfield. That's just hilarious to me.
And the best part was he had the cameraman filming it. This wasn't like done in secret. This was like the whole company was watching it. So if the cameramen are filming it, that means that people in the back of the truck are watching this. They're watching this in the middle of the day. Like, this is really entertaining stuff.
Who eventually, Adam Cartwright is with us here live, and he says, who eventually set him free?
I don't know how he got free. I don't know if he finally worked his way out. He was there a while because we told him, do not let him out. You're not allowed to let him out. And so, of course, nobody wanted to let him out. They're putting cake on him and stuff, and he's squealing to it. He's having fun. He really was, and I don't know how he got out. I don't know if he eventually worked his own way out, or somebody helped him, or one of the camera guys helped him. I'm not sure.
Let me just freestyle this. Can you imagine? And I know this didn't happen, but let's just pretend it did. Can you imagine if you didn't cut him out before doors opened for fans, and as fans are getting their popcorn and making their way down to their seats, there's a dude just duct taped to the ring post with birthday cake on his head? Like, I want to see that. That's what I want to see.
We completely missed the boat. I mean, completely. You're right.
That might be the ultimate. We should try to recreate that as a photo op at StarCast.
Yes. We'll duct tape the fan that wins the lottery or something and leave them there for the fans coming into the arena.
I don't mean to give a spoiler, but I'm going to have an AEW ring set up in the lobby of the hotel. So there will be a ring post there.
Just outstanding.
Hypothetically, if you feel froggy on Saturday, now we know what we can recreate. All right, boys and girls, speaking of hijinks, that's what we're talking about today. The rise of DX is our topic today here on Something to Wrestle. And, of course, I guess DX was really born out of the Clique, or at least that's the way fans perceive it. Now, we've always been under the impression that the main players in the Clique were Shawn Michaels and Triple H and Sean Waltman and Razor Ramon and Diesel. Now, of course, there were other folks involved. I think Aldo Montoya was an honorary member. Jeff Jarrett considers himself an honorary member. But these guys, by and large, are working the top of the WWF card for the mid-90s. And for several months of 94 and almost all of 95, they're really featured as a big part of the new generation. And outside of the ring, they become known as the Clique. This is never really officially acknowledged on WWE programming. Of course, Shawn Michaels would start to refer to his group of fans as the Clique. But by early 96, we know that Scott Hall and Kevin Nash are on their way out. So the real life Clique is going to be breaking up. But when was the first time you remember hearing about the Clique? Was that a thing in the locker room, or was that something that the newsletters talked about?
No, it was a thing in the locker room, but it wasn't a matter of, there wasn't a lot of contentiousness in the locker room. There were people that didn't like each other. You know, Shawn and Brett had a disagreement. That was more over who was going to be the top guy in the company that fit, and that overflowed into, I think, personal animosity, I believe, at the time. I think both those guys would say that. And there was some, obviously, some different personality problems. You know, when business is bad, personality problems really manifest themselves because you're not making money. And when I got there, we weren't making money. And so you had a few personality issues, but it wasn't like we hate those guys. You had several cliques. You know, you had the Samoan guys, you had the Canadians, you had the BSK, you had the Clique. So it wasn't like it was this group they just hung out together, you know, because we didn't have internet and we didn't have social media. We didn't have cell phones or anything. So guys hung out together. So guys invariably hung out in groups, you know, because that's who they were used to. You know, like, for instance, you know, the Hearts and the Canadians, they had more in common than, say, the BSK. You know, so the BSK would hold out together, the Canadian group would hang out together. But there wasn't a lot of contentiousness between. I think that's been, over time, people have rewritten that into history of, oh, there was all this problem in the locker room. I was in the locker room. There wasn't problems in the locker room. It's just guys just hung out together. But when we went overseas or went in groups, you would see all the groups intermingling. It wasn't like this is our treehouse, you're not allowed in it. It wasn't like that. It was just a group of guys that had more commonality with each other and would ride together.
Do you think some of the perception of the Clique was shaped by shoot interviews? I ask that respectfully because I know a guy like Shane Douglas, who I think a lot of, huge Shane Douglas fan, one of my favorite ECW characters. I know he would do interviews and he was never super complimentary about the Clique. So I wanted to know from your perspective, you know, what influence as far as the way fans viewed it as these guys are manipulating and they're trying to take over and they're not good guys, and whatever sort of negative connotation that the Clique brought about. Was it born out of shoot interviews, and how much of that was real, true, authentic feelings, and how much of that was guys just sort of working? I know that sounds silly, but believe it or not, guys, a shoot interview is not always a shoot interview. Sometimes they're angling for a program. I know that sounds silly. We're almost like the inception of wrestling here. It's the story within a story within a story. But do you think shoot interviews and newsletters and all of that really sort of built this aura around the Clique, don't you think?
Yeah, and it's about who has the microphone that kind of molds the narrative. You know, Shane Douglas, I mentioned personality conflicts. That was one of them. I wasn't there for the Shane Douglas. Shane already left, and I've know Shane, I guess, fairly well now, I guess I could say, and I think we're friends. And certainly have no bad feelings towards Shane. In fact, very good feelings towards Shane. And I think, but the personality conflict that you had between Shane and the guys in the clique, I think was legit. And so there were some personal feelings that were not good feelings going back and forth from what I understand. Cause I got there shortly after. So I heard all the stories, about, what all happened. And sometimes those things just happen. You interview Bret Hart about Goldberg, you'll think he's the worst human being on the planet because they have a personality issue. And I'm not going to get into that, who's right or who's wrong, but whoever has the microphone kind of molds the narrative. And you're right, guys who do shoot interviews, I listen to so many shoot interviews, and one thing Mr. Briscoe and I always try to do is be honest and completely honest. We misremember sometimes because it was 30 years ago, and we had thousands of shows, and it didn't really matter to us if it was Cleveland or Detroit or LA. That stuff didn't matter to us. So we get dates wrong and sometimes people wrong. That's not on purpose. I think sometimes a lot of guys, they weren't used to being fact checked, especially back when he first started shoot interviews. I'm not talking about Shane Douglas. I'm not talking about anybody in particular. They're not used to being fact checked. So they have stories that they've told over time that could be wrong, and they're telling it for a reason. They're getting themselves over. They're trying to make themselves look cool or look tough or something like that. Nowadays, it's harder to do that because all you got to do is go back and check the video. But back then, you couldn't. You look at politicians when they first started quit having to lie. It was right around the Clinton era. So before the Clinton era, and I'm not talking about the Clintons in particular about lying or not lying. All politicians lie. They're all douchebags. But they would be able to say one thing in one town and one thing in a different town, completely different because they're doing to a different audience. That's what politicians did. They just lied to whoever they're talking in front of. Well, then the internet changed it. Now all of a sudden you can't say something in one town because they'll take the sound bite and they'll play it in the next town. So you had politicians start getting fact checked. Wrestlers didn't either. No one did. Because you didn't have all the internet, you didn't have YouTube, you didn't have ways to check people. So people would just make up shit on shoot interviews and say whatever they wanted, make themselves look cool, make themselves look tough. They never did it to make themselves not look tough. They never lied the other way. So it's pretty much that was it self-serving? Yeah, I think you can look at what they did and why they did it and pretty much say that it was self-serving.
Let's talk a little bit about, I can't believe this is real, the curtain call. It doesn't feel like it should have been controversial with the benefit of hindsight. It's a house show. I think everybody listening to this knows it was the farewell show, if you will, for the Diesel character and the Razor Ramon character in the WWF. It went down in Madison Square Garden on May 19th, 1996. As a reminder, Razor Ramon's a good guy. Diesel's a bad guy. Triple H or Hunter Hearst Helmsley is a bad guy. Shawn Michaels is a good guy. So now you've got good guys and bad guys raising each other's hands, hugging, celebrating, saying farewell. And Kevin Nash actually went on his podcast. Click this, check that out. Said, we had talked to Vince about doing this, not to the extent it ended up being, but we always took things a little further than Vince expected us to. We talked about it, doing it as a tribute to our buddies that were leaving. While on the one hand, these are the guys going to the other place to do battle with us. On the other hand, those guys are our family. We came back through the curtain, and Vince said it was great, but it wasn't for everybody. So Vince had to do something about it, and the next day we were told we killed the business. Now, that's certainly the narrative that's out there, that this was approved and everything was fine, but when other people were upset, Vince had to respond. What do you remember about the curtain call, and how do you remember the locker room feeling about the curtain call?
Yeah, I wasn't there. I've heard in a podcast that I was there and upset about it, but I wasn't there and I wasn't upset about it. So neither are true. And I think the person that said the podcast had misremembered because there's no reason for him to put me there for any nefarious reason. It just a person, I was at nearly all the shows, but I was booked on a different show at the time. I believe a different show, or else I just wasn't booked that night. I talked to Jerry Briscoe a lot about it. Briscoe was furious, and he went to Kevin Nash right after it. And Nash is the first one that told Jerry Briscoe, hey, the old man approved it. And so Jerry went to Vince and said, what in the hell have you done? And because Jerry was very upset about it. And Vince said, well, and I did okay. It wasn't quite what I okayed. He got a little bit more than what I thought. And that night, they always went to Smith and Walensky's. That was Vince's favorite steakhouse.
Yep.
And Briscoe refused to get in the car with Vince. Vince goes, "You gonna get in the car?" And Jerry cut a hell of a promo on him, and wouldn't get in the car with him. And went back to his hotel and flew home. Jerry was pretty upset about it because Vince had approved it. Not at Kevin, because Vince had said it was okay. Jerry was mad at Vince, and so the boys, there was mixed feelings. My thought always was, see what happens. If we go to the Garden the next time and it's in half, then yeah, these guys did the wrong thing and gonna be mad at them. If it doesn't have any effect, then nothing wrong with them. Not my cup of tea. I wouldn't have done it. But businesses, you've always had guys doing stuff in the business that sometimes you don't know if it's good or not. And it was so different from what we did back then. I took the wait and see attitude that, you know what, maybe this isn't bad. I don't know. I didn't like it, but I never spoke up against it. And I wouldn't to this day because I didn't know at the time, and it did not hurt business. So apparently what they thought was correct. Talking about the click, what they thought was correct.
I am curious. Does it matter that it's a house show? I mean, I know it's Madison Square Garden and this is supposed to be sacred ground and blah, blah, blah for WWE. I get that. But at the end of the day, it's not like it was broadcast. So it's not like they embarrassed the company globally. I don't know. It feels like with the benefit of hindsight, it shouldn't have been that big a deal.
We did stuff in house shows all the time. And
yes.
we broke kayfabe. We did all kinds of crazy stuff in house because we were just having fun. And so you look at some of the stuff we did in house shows, you go, my God, man, you guys are killing the business. We'd never do that on TV. And these guys didn't do it on TV. So, yeah, does it make a difference if it was a house show? 100%. I mean, I think these guys knew what they were doing, and it was a big deal to them. They knew it was not TV. And, to this day, I don't see much wrong with it. Is it my cup of tea? No. I'm a huge kayfabe guy, and I wouldn't do something like that just because of my belief in kayfabe. But I don't have a problem with them doing it. And business didn't go down. If business had gone down, I would have said at the time, you guys made a mistake. Now, I still don't know if I've been mad at them. They just would have made a mistake. They weren't trying to kill the business. They were doing something with their friends. It was something that, if you're out there trying to kill the business as you're leaving the territory, but you had two guys staying in the territory. They weren't trying to kill it. They were just trying to have a good time with their friends. And business did not go down.
Hey, I do want to ask a little bit about house shows and the difference between house shows and television, because I do feel like, I have to be honest, I had more fun at house shows than I did at TV tapings. And I know that there's a large portion of our audience who didn't enjoy going to house shows. They wanted to go to the live television event because they wanted to see something happen, something to advance the storyline, something of consequence. But as far as just in a vacuum, what show did I enjoy more? I always enjoyed the house show more because they're playing to you, the crowd, more rather than playing to the hard camera. And one of the things I've noticed, and I feel like this is by design, is that the house show approach was a little more loose and a little more comedic and a little more fun. Like I've seen house shows where, in the middle of a match, there would be a dance off and a referee may get involved or things like that. And we've heard Edge and Christian doing the red nose bit, or someone trying to gag the Undertaker with cucumbers, or Owen Hart selling popcorn, or the Worm, I believe, was created on a house show. And I know
with me and Ron.
Yeah. So there's lots of fun stuff that just is born out of a house show. Was that a WWE edict? Like, does that come top down? Hey, we want the house show to be more fun, more family friendly, more comedic.
That's a great question because it wasn't an official edict, but it was an edict. They wanted you to have fun at house shows. They wanted you to try stuff. That was the whole idea. They didn't want you going out there and having the same match from night after night after night. For one, Lanza will get bored and probably quit watching you and quit giving you any type of decent reports back to Vince. But two, they wanted you to try different stuff. I watched a match one time with Stone Cold and Kurt Angle. You got to ask Kurt about this sometime. I don't remember where it was. And they did like 30 false finishes. So Steve's calling the match. Obviously, he's the heel. He's the older guy, and he has Kurt hit him with his finish. And you could tell Kurt what he's doing. 1, 2, Steve kicks out. Steve stuns him. 1, 2, Steve pulled up his shoulder. Then they start going through just a series of finishes. It was one of the most entertaining things I've ever seen. The boys in the back are rolling. I mean, we're beside ourselves. We're laughing so hard. It was one of the most fun, entertaining matches I've ever seen. And the crowd got it. The crowd was out there just watching this. They had no idea what they're going to do next. I don't think Steve had any idea what he's going to do next. Kurt had no idea what was going on. It was one of the most entertaining things I've ever seen. You couldn't do that on TV, but do it in a house show, it's just fun. And so, yeah, there was this thing. And when they came back, Lanza was just beside himself how great it was. It's just fun. And so, yeah, the edict was there, but I don't think it was an official edict of have fun in the house shows.
Alex is with us here live, and he says, if the guy in the crowd wasn't filming the curtain call, would it have been as big of an issue? I mean, I don't think at the time anybody even knew it was filmed.
Yeah.
But is that the first time you remember seeing WWE embrace fan cam footage? Because as a reminder, that was a big no-no. You were not supposed to be recording these events, and guys would sneak cameras in and record house shows. And I used to be a tape trader, and I remember snagging some of those. You could see matches that you were never supposed to see because fans were literally sneaking camcorders in. Now that feels like time from a bygone era, but it was actually born out of people shooting movies in a theater, and they became bootleg movies that you could buy on the street. So you wouldn't have to go to the movie theater. You could actually watch it at home. Yes, that really was an industry before you could just get, you know, leaked stuff off a message board or something, or a news group or something like that. But do you remember WWE ever embracing sort of bootleg fan cam footage ever before? I think this might be the only one.
I think this is the only one because, man, they shut down cameras like crazy. I remember the first time we were in Nashville in the airport bar and just doing nothing out of the ordinary. A fan took a picture with a cell phone. I mean, just took a picture with a cell phone, just walked by and took a picture. And it was so unusual back then that Undertaker called the manager over and said, hey, man, that guy just took a picture of us. And the manager went over there and just bollocked the guy. The guy came over and apologized and deleted it. And, you know, nowadays you do that. It's on your TikTok video right away. It was a different world back then. People tried to sneak in stuff all the time and take pictures. And, you know, when Napolitano and Apter were banned, you know, they would sneak in and try to figure out a way to take pictures for magazines. So it was a whole industry. I don't know why they decided to embrace it here. There were a lot of guys mad. But now a lot of the guys that were mad, you know, were, you know, the Canadian group, and they had a personal problem with Shawn. So it wasn't, I don't know if they were that mad at, hey, they're killing the business. They may have been. I don't know, can't read their minds, and I wouldn't dare dream to. But it was also just a personal animosity towards Shawn. They wanted to take any way in the world they could to take a shot at him because there was this general dislike between them. But I didn't remember a ton of guys just being furious about it. I do remember, you know, some guys in that group that had the problems with Shawn, the personality problems, being mad about it.
I do want to ask you, you know, at least from your perspective as one of the guys in the locker room, how was Scott Hall and Kevin Nash leaving for WCW received? I say that because I want to remind everybody, and I know that now we like to think of, oh, they went because WCW was on fire. They really weren't. Obviously, the NWO doesn't exist. They're not there yet. Monday Nitro just started the prior Labor Day, so call it early September. So here we are less than a year later, and these guys are jumping ship. And for years and years and years, respectfully, most everyone who was in WCW's dream was to get to the WWF. These guys had both been there before as the Diamond Stud and Vinny Vegas and Oz and a handful of other things. Well, now they've enjoyed great success with Vince as Intercontinental Champion, as World Champion. They've main evented a lot of pay-per-views and done really well in the wrestling business, probably exceeded their own expectations. Is it just the lure of the guaranteed contract? Were they frustrated with their payoffs in the locker room? I'm just wondering, did the boys think, hey, you're making a mistake?
No, I don't think they did. You know, Vince had a finite amount of money, and he paid Brett a fortune because, you know, I'm not sure Vince knew what to do. He knew he needed to lock in his top stars, and Brett was our top star. And so he locked in Brett, but there wasn't a ton of extra money. And so, you know, listen to the stories that Kevin and Scott have told. They've went to Vince and realized there was a ceiling there of where they're going to be monetarily and how far they're going to go. And, you know, as far as their push and everything, you know, I mean, obviously Kevin was a really long reigning champion, but where do you go from there? You're going to be champion again, but the money was a limit. And so I think we knew they went there because deep pockets of Ted Turner. And we certainly had no problem with that. They fulfilled their obligation. It was really cool what they did. And I got a lot of respect for Kevin and Scott when they went to Europe, because Europe was the only place we're making money, decent money, most of the boys. And they were booked in Europe. If they hadn't gone, they'd have really burned nearly, because we were working nearly every major city in Germany. They'd have burned the entire country if they hadn't gone. And they went because it was the right thing to do. So I got a lot of respect for how they finished up, and they finished up the right way. They didn't just say, hey, we're leaving. We're not putting anybody over and we're leaving. Vince took pretty good care of them as far as finishes and things, but they left the right way.
What do you remember of that international tour? The one I'm asking about is the one right after WrestleMania 12. So this would have been before the curtain call. Of course, the curtain call is it. They're out after that. Mm-hmm. But that international tour, which showed them, all over Europe, allegedly the guys were not following any of the WWE policies or rules and really pissing off the agents, because they understood, hey, we're leaving. We've put in our notice. What are they going to do? Punish us? They're going to do whatever they're going to do either way. And allegedly these guys maybe had a little too much fun on that tour. Do you remember them giving heartburn to the agents in that regard?
No, I don't, and I was there. I was on the bus every day. I sat by Gerald Briscoe, and he was the agent. I think what that came from was the thing that happened with with Sonny. Sonny got mad because Scott and Kevin were late for the bus one morning, and she came in and told George Steele right in front of everybody, hey, I missed my tanning. I missed my workout, all because Scott and Kevin went to the bar and had drinks last night. And we're sitting there. The thing about it was, when we're on a 20-something day international tour, we don't care if you're late for the bus. We can wait on the bus, or we can go and wait in the hotel room where we're going to end up in 4 hours. It didn't really matter to us if guys were late. So what? We're waiting somewhere anyway. And if they're late one day, you could possibly be late the next. And you don't want, things happen. Shit happens. It's not a big deal. To me, nothing was a big deal. I don't think they were. I completely disagree with that narrative. 100% disagree with it. I was there that whole tour, and I sat by Gerald Briscoe and played cards most of the time. He was my buddy that I hung out with, and he was the lead agent. There was no issue with Scott and Kevin, none.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask about, because you mentioned Sonny, this isn't the trip where she had some shitty food, is it?
I think it was, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, because I was the only international tour I was on with. I guess Scott and Kev were there, right? When that happened. Yeah, and it came out because she stooged them, and then all of a sudden something happened. And you got to understand the creativity of this. So you got to admire this a little bit. And people are gonna think I'm a horrible person for saying this, but we used to get the food, and you'd put on the top of the label what you wanted. So you'd want steak and potatoes, you'd want chips or something, and then you'd put it in on a top, and then they would pack it and then put the label on top of it. Your name would be on it with all the stuff that you requested on it, and it would be sealed by that top that had the description of what food you wanted. So apparently Sonny wanted pasta. So apparently underneath their pasta, there was a gift. And so that's where Sonny apparently got back into her room and was cutting into it, and all of a sudden, like, this food tastes like shit.
Well, something that doesn't taste like shit is Factor. Make this the best season yet with nutritious 2-minute meals from Factor. Eating well has never been this easy. Just heat up and enjoy, giving you more time to do what you want. Get outside instead of prepping and cooking indoors. And Factor meals arrive fresh and ready to eat, perfect for any active lifestyle. With 45 different weekly menu options, you can pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. Maybe you want calorie smart. Maybe you're looking to bulk and you need some protein plus. Maybe keto is the diet you're rocking these days, and they've got a lot of other options too. Factor is going to help you power your day with satisfying breakfasts, on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, and guilt-free snacks, and even desserts. It's easy to savor more. Right now, I'm going to encourage you to check out Factor, because Factor meals pack in the flavor with none of the fuss. I've been a day one user of Factor. As soon as they started advertising on the program, they sent me a sample box. Now, after that, I was on my own. We still eat it to this day. My wife loves it. She's been doing fitness competitions. She can get everything she needs from Factor. Half of the guys in professional wrestling these days are in a strict diet, and they travel with a quote unquote food bag like they're damn horses. Well, guess what's in most of them? Factor, because you know exactly what's in there. It's good stuff. It's perfect for you. And I'm telling you, it doesn't get any more convenient. But maybe best of all, it tastes fantastic. This is restaurant quality stuff. And it's so simple, man. You take off that hard shell carton on the outside, and then you pop a couple of holes in the plastic. You pop it in the microwave. And when it comes out, dude, 2 minutes later, you're ready to eat. It's fantastic. It doesn't get any better than this. I absolutely love it. I know you will too. Get started at factormeals.com/wrestle50off and use the code wrestle50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code wrestle50off at factormeals.com/wrestle50off for 50% off plus free shipping.
Hey, Conrad, I'm very interested about this. So you heard something different about the European tour. What did you hear?
Well, basically what you were laying out about Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and that, you know, they missed the bus. Like if they had a time, or, hey, you can't do this on the bus, or, hey, we need you at that time. It's like, we'll get there when we get there. Now, that's not that big of a deal. But of course, I'm sure someone who has sour grapes about their position in the card, their pay, whatever it is, somebody from the outside looking in is going to say, well, that's not fair. Hey, they're leaving. If you want to quit, you can do the same. Like, it just feels like, what are we talking about? Like, you just don't like them. Just say that. That's okay.
Right. And that's what it was. And the only person that really bitched the whole tour was Sonny. Okay. And, you know, it wasn't, I was there at the very front of the bus because Gerald Briscoe was one of the few guys I knew. I didn't know a lot of people. And we were good friends back then. We'd sit there and play cards the whole time. And so I got to hear the things that, you know, whatever's happening. Who's the head agent with the agents? Scott and Kevin were late 1 or 2 days, but almost everybody on that tour was late 1 or 2 days. You know, people go out and you know, go out somewhere and disappear into the night and, you know, end up drinking it all night or something. Guys would be late. We just laugh about it. You know, so-and-so's late. He must have had a rough night. Then you'd see them get on the bus and they look terrible because they're hungover, and you'd laugh at them. But there wasn't heat, but they weren't any late more than anybody else on that tour.
It is.
There was some sour grapes, and what happened after the shit happened with Sonny? You know, there were some issues, and the guy who calmed it down was Tom Pritchard. You know, they went to Tom to look for some backing, and Tom's the one that was a reasonable voice with the warring factions, you might call them, and Tom really de-escalated the whole event.
We know what's going to happen after Scott Hall and Kevin Nash are in WCW. They're going to create the NWO, and by September, Sean Waltman is with them. So no more 1, 2, 3 kid in the WWF. So the clique is really separating. What's left behind, of course, is Triple H, as we know him back then, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and Shawn Michaels. Now, again, Triple H is fresh off of a squash match at WrestleMania 12 against the Ultimate Warrior. Allegedly, they were going to build him up to make him the king of the ring, and those plans get derailed in the shadow of the curtain call. Instead, Stone Cold Steve Austin changed the business forever, thanks to you in a large part.
Yes.
But I do think between the curtain call and JBL, I mean, those two things really did change the course of wrestling history forever, because that's when Austin 316 is born, and we're off to the races. My point is, the Hunter Hearst Helmsley character stays sort of lower mid-card. Shawn Michaels is the babyface champion. But that sort of fall, we'll call it summer and fall of 96, are not necessarily huge, you know, booming business months for WWE. And we've talked a little bit about the pressure that's on the world champion. How do you think Shawn was handling being the top guy as a babyface champion? We know he's wanted this for a long time, but now that he's gotten it, and 3 of his best friends are now on the other channel, and respectfully, creatively, the NWO was on fire, and WWE was losing ground to WCW. So the move that maybe people were questioning around WrestleMania, like, man, I don't know if I would leave the WWF. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash looked like freaking geniuses by the fall of 96. Yeah. Do you think Shawn was it a little careful what you wish for maybe for Shawn? Like, hey, he always wanted this. This was the goal, but now that he's got it, hey, this isn't as fun as I wanted it to be?
Yeah, I think that was the case. I've talked with a lot of guys, and I've kind of been interested in how champions react to the championship and how they react to losing the championship. A lot of guys just kind of disappear if they lose and just kind of want to quit the business. It's very unique dynamic getting that championship, especially the big one in a major territory. And Shawn got the championship, but it wasn't with the hot company, and it wasn't because of Shawn. It was we had Scott and Kevin with us. We had X-Pac with us. We had all these guys with us. We couldn't do anything with them. It wasn't until Scott and Kevin went to WCW and became the NWO that started off this whole Attitude Era. Of course, then Steve getting hot. But, we had all these guys with us, and we were not the right company. Shawn all of a sudden becomes, one of the greatest of all time, and he was that great. Back then, he was just better than everybody else. He gets the championship, but he's with the wrong company. He had great talent around him. We just didn't know what to do with it. Like I said many times, Triple H was an aristocrat. Kane was a dentist. You had so many guys. Stone Cold was the ringmaster. We had all these guys. We had them in the wrong gimmick. And so Shawn had to feel almost frustrated with it. Like, I finally get this title. I've got this great talent with me, and we're not drawing in much money at all. And it certainly wasn't his fault. Shawn later, has drawn a ton of money. But he had to feel a little bit like, man, of all times for me to get it, now is when I got it.
Let's talk a little bit about what happens in 1997. We know in February of 97, that's where Shawn is going to drop the title, is going to give that now infamous speech about losing his smile. And I am curious. I mean, we've talked to Bruce about this. We've talked to JR about this. I don't know how much time you and I have spent talking about this, but the Wrestling Observer newsletter would start to highlight in this era how many times Shawn had a title and lost the title without ever actually losing it in the ring. He would just forfeit it or be stripped of it or what have you. I don't know why Dave had like an axe to grind with Shawn, but I know that from a Vince standpoint, I shouldn't say I know. We've been led to believe that when he feels like someone is injury prone, or to say what JR would say, they're unreliable. Like he would say, one of the reasons Ken Shamrock didn't enjoy more success in the WWE is because he was not always super reliable. If he was booked for something, sometimes he'd be there, sometimes he wouldn't. When Vince McMahon had put the whole machine behind you, like he had Shawn Michaels, and now he forfeits the title. Now, again, we're under the impression that he has a serious knee injury. That's what Shawn said, and we all believe Shawn in that. But there was a lot of people who didn't like Shawn who sort of looked at it sideways and said, does he really? And will question the authenticity of this injury. And that's something we would hear a lot about Shawn Michaels. And I don't know if that's fair or not. How much of that is shoot interview? How much of that is newsletter? But what did the locker room think of Shawn losing the smile and forfeiting the title rather than just losing it in the ring?
We all like Shawn, and all that stuff you hear about Shawn, there's a reason it's all one-sided, because Shawn never told his side of the story.
Yeah.
Vince never told his side of the story. So when everything is negative, you just look at, well, everybody's saying this, nobody's defending it. Well, Shawn didn't defend it. Either he didn't feel like he needed to, or Shawn didn't want to, or didn't have the desire to, whatever it was. Vince certainly wasn't going to defend it. Vince didn't do that. And he never did. Even later, Vince didn't do that. So it's all just one-sided. We never thought Shawn was injury ridden. We never thought that there was a problem with Shawn as far as carrying the title. We knew how good he was. And we were in his corner for all of this. Shawn got some bad luck. I mean, you had a lot of guys had bad luck, and you start to get a run. I don't think people understand how hard it is when you get that position. You're wrestling every single night, long matches, and they're important matches. So even on live events, when you're closing the show and you're following this loaded card of guys who are all saying, follow this, you've got to come out with something magical every single night. That's every single night without a day off. In the same time, especially when you're a babyface, or if you're the top star like Shawn, who's the only one getting press that was outside of wrestling, your obligations are huge. I mean, you're getting worked to death in this. I mean, people that come off this, Jack Briscoe famously threw his watch in Jerry Briscoe's lake and said, I never want to be champion again. I never want to wear a watch again. It wears you out. And I think that's what it was with Shawn. I never thought he was And to my knowledge, nobody else thought he was injury ridden either. I just think it's guys that didn't like him that were doing podcasts or whatever it was back then, and Shawn not answering. And when you don't have a voice that's answering, everything's one-sided.
It's funny that you say that, because I recently talked to Jeff Jarrett about TNA. I don't know that you were reading the Wrestling Observer at any point in your life, but through the entire run of TNA, when Jeff was in power, it was not written about very positively. And I asked Jeff, in hindsight, do you wish you would have co-opted the media a little more? Because I think a lot of the negativity that fans sort of ate up online and in the newsletter, maybe some of that narrative could have been shaped a little differently had he just picked up the phone and called Dave Meltzer. But I think Jeff was a little old school in thinking, hey, that's for fans. And that's a very small section of the fans. And I do think that's a Vince McMahon thing. And I'm wondering, are you from that same school? Because all this negativity was out here about Shawn Michaels, and he never responded to it. And that's fair. But I know that when people have been critical of you online, you too never really responded to it. Is that just the Vince McMahon media training, if you will?
Yeah, 100%. And you look like a douche.
Yeah.
I mean, you look like a douche trying to come out and explain your way out of it. You're supposed to be this big, tough guy, especially if you're a heel. You're supposed to be this big, rough, tough guy. And all of a sudden you're now defending yourself on the internet of, hey, I'm really a good guy. I've really got a lot of friends. Look at me. I do this stuff for kids. And look at me. I'm really not that bad a guy. And you just look like a douche. I mean, you look like that's not a star. That's a guy begging for approval. And a lot of it with Meltzer, we would feed Meltzer some false information often. They did it through Howard Finkel. You'd feed Finkel, and Finkel didn't always know it was false. And then Finkel would stooge to Meltzer, and sometimes he did, And so we use Meltzer in some ways as far as trying to feed him false information. And so now all of a sudden, if you're dealing with him, I mean, you're almost dealing with the guy that is, we felt like was doing something contrary to our company's goodwill, is what we thought. And so we wouldn't deal with him. Whether nowadays he's kind of viewed as a reporter, and I understand that, but back then he was viewed as a guy that was against us, and we were against him.
Let's talk a little bit about what happens when Shawn forfeits the title. To use a sports analogy, when injuries happen, that creates an opportunity for the rest of the roster. There is what's known in sports as a depth chart. Hey, here's your starting lineup, and now here's your second string, and here's your third string. And not necessarily that we're saying that the wrestlers were positioned that way, but I am saying, to use an acting term, if you do have a leading man go down, well, you need someone else in that role. So you're going to bring maybe a supporting cast member, and you're going to make them the leading man. So either way, there's an opportunity for someone to move up. What we decide to do is take the Final Four pay-per-view, which was originally designed to sort of put a button on what happened at the Royal Rumble, with the Final Four participants deciding who the true winner should be. Since technically Austin was eliminated, but snuck back in and stole the win. So the stakes change in just a couple of days for Final Four. And instead of the winner getting a shot at WrestleMania, now the winner of Final Four is going to be the champion. They go with Brett, but it only lasts one day, and they put the title onto Sid. What was the obviously Brett was the elder statesman. He had been, the masthead of the company for a while at that point. What was the perception and the reaction to putting the title on Sid immediately after Brett wins the title?
Sid had a little bit of heat sometimes when he come back. Sid famously would skip summer wrestling for softball, which is true. That's true. And the Road Warriors used to give him so much hell about that. And so Sid would come in, but I think we thought, and Sid was a good guy, a good guy, and his presence walking to the ring was just amazing. His presence in the ring. He wasn't a good worker, but he's a good worker in a different way. His presence was freaking amazing, and the look that he had was something you can't replicate. I mean, Vince at one point wanted him to take over for Hogan. It was that big. But we always thought that, Sid's going to be here. He's going to leave for softball. And if it wasn't softball, it'd be something else. We never thought that Sid was going to be a long-term guy. Sid was a great guy. everybody liked Sid. Sid got along with everybody,
Yep.
except for Arn one night, but that's a different story. But Sid was a guy that people liked, but we knew that wasn't a long-term solution because we didn't feel like Sid would be around that long.
We know he's not a world champion for very long. He's going to drop that title to The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And through the rest of 97, it becomes a pretty rocky year for Shawn Michaels. We know that when he does come back, he's going to immediately be programmed with Bret Hart. At least that's the direction they're heading. They start cutting promos on each other. We get the big fight backstage, which we've touched on before, and I'm sure we'll talk about a little more in the future. Shawn even takes a detour for a bit and becomes tag team champions with Stone Cold Steve Austin for a bit in 97. But as we start to get into the fall, that's where the volume really starts to turn up. We see on October 21st, Hunter Hearst Helmsley is going to beat Mark Marrow for the Intercontinental title in a 10-minute match on Monday Night Raw. Or actually, that was back in 96. But here in 97 is when we would see Triple H start to break out with Mick Foley. That's where he has a series of incredible matches with the Dude Love character and Mankind, and they're really tearing it up. But by the time we see them start to pair together, I think it might actually be the first time we see DX positioned this way is in that summer or in early fall of 1997. I should mention Final Four is when we see the debut of Chyna. I sort of glossed over that, but she's going to reach over the guardrail and just ragdoll Marlena, and it's positioned on TV like it's almost a fan attacking Marlena. And we've heard behind the scenes that Shawn and Hunter were advocating for her to be a female bodyguard. That's really one of the first times something like that had happened in wrestling. But clearly Chyna had $1 million look. She looked unlike anything we'd ever seen in pro wrestling before. I think she too had some commonality with where she had been training and things like that with Triple H. How was Chyna received in the locker room as best you can recall when she first comes in, call it February of 97?
We've always had some badass women in the business. I mean, Medusa was badass. Beautiful girl. It's just a beautiful lady, still is. But we never had anybody that looked like a freaking Amazon, man. I mean, Chyna just looked, to this day, you don't have anybody that's looked like Chyna. It was unreal when she came. We thought it was great. And we thought, we don't know where we're going with this. But it was so unique to have someone like that, I mean, here's your gladiator that is a woman and looks like a freaking something like she just walked off a pedestal in Greece. I mean, she looked like a freaking Greek god. And she's huge. We thought it was terrific. And by the way, Hunter was a guy, people always talk about Hunter just kind of, got his way to the top. Hunter went through hell, man.
Yeah.
I mean, when he got punished like crazy, he swallowed it. That stuff with Ultimate Warrior, I mean, Warrior was a dick at WrestleMania. He came in, it was supposed to be more a competitive match. He wanted to kick out of Hunter's finish. He wanted to do all this stuff. He just wanted to be Warrior and squash him. Hunter disagreed. Hunter didn't gripe, didn't say a word, went out there and did business exactly like Vince and Warrior had agreed to. Vince, was famous to just get the match in the ring. And that's what Hunter did. Then when Hunter got punished, he swallowed it. He didn't say a word. He just went out there and got beat. Didn't say a word. Kept trying to figure out a way to get back. And, he famously could have quit. And he probably could have gone to WCW. Vince probably would have let him out of his contract. Hunter didn't. I got a lot of respect for what Hunter did. And then he comes up with this idea of Chyna. I mean, this is really good. And this is something that there's so little new in the business. This was new in the business.
By the way, too, this is not the era where people are making huge money in the company. You got to think Chyna probably started out at a fairly meager sum before she became just a megastar. We're getting ahead of ourselves, though. We should mention, I think the first time that Shawn ever pitched the idea of putting this new group, what would become DX, together, is on the Wrestle Vessel. And in our research, I think that was July of 97. If you weren't around back then, I should mention that WCW had what they called the Bruise Cruise. So it was a cruise where it was a WCW themed cruise. I don't think it was the entire ship, but this is before, Jericho was doing his cruise. WCW had the Bruise Cruise. the WWF saw this as an opportunity to make a profit as well. So why not? So they created the Wrestle Vessel in July of 97. Did you ever do a Wrestle Vessel?
I did the Wrestle Vessel.
Tell us about it.
Oh my God. Yeah, it was great. We had a volleyball game that turned into blood sport in the Bahamas. So we played these fans in volleyball, and Billy Gunn and Kid Shamrock freaking became like the world's greatest volleyball players. And we're like, dude, some of these are like teenagers were playing. Maybe we should put them over. They're like, nah, hell no. No, one of them had spiked the ball and hit a teenage girl in the face, and I mean right in the face, and she started crying. And look around, the guys go, yeah. I'm like, guys, that's not what we need to do here. It was awesome. I mean, these guys were so freaking competitive. I mean, literally, we destroyed a bunch of fans in a volleyball game and almost maimed them, some of them. But it was fun. We had a great time. Well, remember Road Dogg? They had a comedian there that was thought he was great. Road Dogg gets up and tells the comedian to take 5 and goes into his own set off ad lib and was hilarious. We put him over, and I think the comedian may have jumped overboard or something. I don't know, but it was fun. The whole Wrestle Vessel was a fun trip.
Well, allegedly, this is where Shawn first approaches Triple H as Triple H and says, hey, man, what if we did something together? And again, remember now, Shawn is still technically a baby face. He's not yet full-blown heel. I know that this is a weird time in the WWE because by that point, we had already started, if you'll recall, Canadian Stampede, one of the best pay-per-views of all time. The Hart family, they're baby faces in Canada, but the Hart Foundation are heels in America. So Shawn Michaels, at least, is still a heel in the rest of the world, but a baby face in America. It's confusing, but that's what we were doing. But he suggests on the Wrestle Vessel, what if Hunter Hearst Helmsley did something with Shawn Michaels? I think Triple H liked that idea. He pitched it to Vince, and Shawn even takes credit for saying that he was the first person to start referring to Hunter as Triple H years before that was the character name. When do you remember hearing that Shawn might be pairing with Triple H? Because the Clique, by and large, had not been acknowledged from a Triple H standpoint just yet. Here's what I mean. I know that we had the curtain call, but there were years where we saw Diesel and Shawn Michaels together. So that was well established. And there was a series of tags, but usually Shawn Michaels and Sean Waltman and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, those were the tag partners. So this is really the first time that we're going to see Shawn Michaels, the character, aligned with Triple H, the character. But since they've been on opposite sides of the street, one's a heel, one's a babyface, did you think it could work? Had you seen enough of them in real life to know that they just had chemistry and it would translate to the camera?
Yeah, you think it would work, but you don't know. You don't know about anything that's going to work until it gets in front of the camera. Road Dogg was a guy that we thought was so entertaining. So was his brother Brad, maybe more entertaining than Road Dogg. You never could get it out for Brad in front of the camera. We always say, man, if you could get Brad Armstrong's personality out, because Brad was one of the greatest workers the world's ever seen. If you could get that out, Brad would have been the guy everywhere. But you never could get it out. You got it out for Road Dogg. And Hunter was kind of the same way. Hunter was a very funny guy, very real quick-witted guy, real fast on his feet. And Hunter, you talk to the Clique, he was always the guy who would come up with different things for him. And they're like surprised, like he just solved our problem. It's like being at a table, and Vince used to always do that and ask the one question you think, why didn't I ask that? That's the obvious question. Hunter was that guy, but you don't know if that's going to translate to camera or not. You don't know until you get out there. And so we always thought there was a good chance because of how smart Hunter was. And because you can't be around a guy that much without knowing a guy's pretty smart. He's pretty quick. He's pretty funny. Guys that are funny are smart guys. Road Dogg's a very smart guy. He does a great work with WWE with scripting out the angles and storylines and all the creative stuff. But you don't know if that's going to translate to on camera. So we all thought it could work. We didn't know if it would work.
Let's talk a little bit about Rick Rude here for a minute. We know that he's going to become a big part of the presentation. Rick Rude hadn't been with the WWF since 1990. I think he was unhappy, as the story goes, about some of its payoffs and the way he was he had been programmed with the Ultimate Warrior, which was really a retread of their Intercontinental feud. But now that Warrior has become world champion, Rick Rude is going to be his #1 opponent. They're actually going to headline SummerSlam. I think that was a fun match. I encourage everybody to go see what a great performer Rick Rude was. But for whatever reason, he's not happy. He goes to WCW. He does win the big gold belt over there, although technically that wasn't the WCW title at the time. Famously, unfortunately, he was injured, had his last match against Sting over in Japan. He has a back injury, gets a Lloyd's of London policy payout, but he starts to make some appearances again for ECW on television. He was a big part of the Barely Legal pay-per-view in the build in early 1997 for that first show. But now here in August, there's going to be an opportunity to have him come in as Shawn Michaels' insurance policy. So as a reminder, around July of 1997, that's where we see the Wrestle Vessel. And on August 11th, on Monday Night Raw, during Shawn Michaels' match with Mankind, Hunter and Chyna are both going to interfere, playing off of Helmsley's recent feud with Mankind. So that explains why he's there. But towards the end of the match, Rick Rude returns and reveals himself to be Shawn Michaels' insurance policy, and he's going to help Shawn win the match by attacking Mankind with a chair. So now we know that this is how we're getting Rick Rude back into the mix. From a locker room perspective, what did they think about Rick Rude coming in here in August of 97? How was he received?
Very well. Boys all loved Rick. I mean, Rick was he was a tough guy. But the guys all liked him. Rick was a nice guy. I mean, Rick was just the nicest guy in the world. Thank God. Thank God a big, tough guy like that is nice. But Rick, everybody loved Rick. I mean, everybody. And I don't know any dissenters out there. If there is, I would be surprised about it. Everybody loved Rick being back. He was very limited in what he could do. All those guys in Minnesota got that Lloyd's policy. Yep. And of course, when you have neck and back injuries, it's kind of easy to cash in. And, Animal's the one that killed those policy because Animal got caught at the gym, which is the big chemical factory up in Hamel, Minnesota, leg pressing something like 40 million pounds or something. And that's what I understood. And they filmed him, and that Animal killed the Lloyd's policy because of that. But Rick was the one. He wasn't gonna screw up that Lloyd's policy. Kurt paid it off and came back and did some stuff. Rude wasn't going to do that. And plus, he may have been more hurt than the others, so you couldn't do a lot with him. But it was great having Rude back. Rude was a funny guy, nice guy.
I do want to spend just a minute here and talk about Rick Rude for just a minute, because I don't know if you've heard this, but there is a long-standing rumor amongst wrestling fans, and it's silly, but I got to ask. Man, I feel weird even asking. Have you heard the story about Rick Rude's penis?
How many penis rumors are there?
There's a lot of penis rumors in wrestling, but allegedly, as the story goes, he was injecting, I think it's called Caberject.
Oh, I've heard this. Yes. I don't know if it's true or not. I have no idea.
You have heard that story.
Yes. 100%.
So
tell me the rumor, because I've heard this. He injected it at one point. He injected like too much, as all wrestlers do, and couldn't get it to go down. Is that the story you heard?
Yes, he was injecting himself with. I don't think this is Viagra in this era. I think in the adult film industry, guys would give themselves an injection to make them Superman, and I think it was called Caberject. I'm probably saying it wrong, but John Nord was quoted as saying, "Rick had that. I guess you would call it demon. He just wanted to get kinky as hell and get numb, and then he would actually shoot it in his pecker. Well, 1 out of a million guys will do that. That's just very rare. That's the extreme of the extreme." And Bruce actually had a conversation with Rick Rude's widow, Michelle, shortly after his death. And Bruce said, "A lot of rumor and innuendo. I spoke with Rick's wife the day after she found him, and she indicated that prescription bottles and just the fear that due to injuries, I guess he'd been in an automobile accident recently, that he may have just overdone it, and it was an accidental overdose." But this whole narrative that I guess he had injected it enough that maybe it created a problem, and maybe he couldn't deal with that. I don't know, but you've heard a version of that story. You don't believe it though, do you?
No, that's how he died.
Well, I think
he died from a heart on.
I think he did. I think the injections got infected. The narrative. This all feels silly to even talk about. I can't believe this is real and I don't believe it's real. You've heard of guys who were giving themselves injections, and maybe now you've got an open wound.
I've heard of it to this day.
Now it's going to get infected, and when things get infected, things happen. And so allegedly, maybe he had done it to the point that he had permanently damaged the area. And as the story goes, maybe he overdosed because he had hurt himself.
Now, see, I did not hear that part. I did hear the part about the injections, and at one point he had apparently like he had something to drink or took something and injected a little too much, and it didn't go down for like maybe a really long time. and I heard he had to go to the hospital for that. I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah. I'd heard the story that Rick had gone overboard a couple of times. Rick went overboard with a lot of stuff.
There is a story out there that he was running through it so regular that when it came time to get a prophylactic and no one had one, he would get a hotel room service to let him borrow a Ziploc bag or saran wrap or something. And all of that just feels like, what are we even doing? Let me just tell you, though, I don't know what's real, and I don't believe that's real. But I know for sure that you can enter the room dick first, and it's much safer with Blue Chew. It's just a tablet. It's not just a tablet. It's a cheat code for your crotch. It's going to get you stronger, harder, and longer lasting. Like someone gave your downstairs a pep talk and a gym membership. Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets for better sex. Jack could climb his own stalk with one of those beans. Guys, this isn't just about performance. It's about your legacy or your third legacy. Give her group chat something to talk about. Nothing makes you more of a legend than a little Blue Chew. Discover your options right now at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. As always, get your first month of Blue Chew free. Just use the promo code WRESTLE at checkout and pay $5 for shipping. That's it. Join Blue Chew's mission to upgrade humanity one thrust at a time. Head to BlueChew.com for details and important safety information. And a big thanks to Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast.
There's a lot of wrestler dick myths that are out there.
It feels like poop and wiener are like at the top of every wrestling list.
Which right? Those are not my two favorite topics. In fact, if they're not even on my topic list of things that I will discuss, I really want to discuss.
And yet here we are. At least
here we are discussing poop and wieners
every week.
Every single week, yeah.
Instead of rumor and innuendo, it's poop and wieners.
That's right.
I hope
there may be something here psychologically that somebody needs to fucking deal with us. We could honestly be some screwed up individuals.
I used to have a gavel around here. I wish I had a gavel and I could say, let me just make it official, right? Oh, you've got one handy?
Oh, I've got the gavel from the old.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
From the old court case.
Official.
I just woke up my new rescue cat, Briscoe.
Poop and wiener are banned from StarCast. Judge Layfield just made it official. No poop and wiener.
Yes. Yes.
Hey, so we know that now DX is starting to form on TV. We actually see Shawn Michaels face The Undertaker at In Your House Ground Zero. It happens on September 7th. And we would see Helmsley, Chyna, and Rude all interfere on Michaels' behalf. That's going to force the match to end in a no contest. But the month of August 11th to September 7th is really where we see the DX thing start to progress. But shortly after September 7th is where the group starts to appear together consistently. They even start coming down to the ring with a new theme song, Break It Down, performed by the Chris Warren Band. And these TV entrances are really cool because we're going to have interspersed clips here of women dancing in cages, policemen running, car chases, barcodes, sound waves, riots. This is really innovative stuff at the time. Yeah. And a real departure from where a year prior we had Duke the Dumpster Drosay here. This DX presentation, total different approach. Is this Vince McMahon's answer to the NWO?
Yes and no. And a couple of things here. Hunter had to get to that point. The thing with Cactus was getting Hunter to a different level.
Yes.
Every champion, I've said this many times, has to walk through hell. The champions that really transcend the genre. So Steve had to have the match with Brett. The Rock had to have the match with Mankind. Triple H had to have the match. It's what made him Triple H, because you got to know that even though these guys may be chicken shit heels, they're tough. They're tough guys that you can actually believe in at some point, that they're menacing and they're threatening. This really helped Hunter become Triple H, those matches with Cactus to get him to that level of where he could be there with Shawn. You knew Shawn was on a different level from the rest of the world. You needed Hunter to be there. And those were very important to get there. And then when Vince started looking at the Attitude Era, it was Chris Chambers, from my understanding, that first drew out the scratch WWE. He drew it on a napkin. And he goes, Vince, we need something like this. And Vince looked at it and goes, yeah, use it. You know, he didn't plan on using that. But Chris was the one that first brought it up to Vince. Vince, it's really interesting. Some of the meetings that Vince had, guys like Chris Chambers would tell us about that over time. And we heard about, what they would say. It's Vince, we got to be edgy. We got to be this. We got to be that. So all of a sudden, Vince just opened up the freaking show and said, guys, let's do it. I mean, he's in risk of losing his father's company at this point. And he had to do something. And I think that's where these videos of like DX came out of. This is Vince saying, you know what? You're right. Balls to the wall. Let's no regrets. Let's figure out what we're going to do. Let's go do battle with these guys down south.
Man, I can't help but be inspired by this, because I think it was Shawn who was quoted in an interview as saying, I asked myself, if I was watching me on TV, what would I want me to do? And it was more of what he felt like the NWO was doing. It's more of what his real personality was. And I know that we've had discussions before in wrestling about, hey, did you prefer this guy as a heel or a babyface? It's rare that you have someone like a Hulk Hogan. I know he's not popular these days, but you can't argue, man, the mid-'80s and the success of the WWF, the biggest babyface in history. But now in the late 90s, Hollywood Hogan and the NWO, one of the biggest heels of the era. He did it fabulously well. But I know Shawn really prided himself on being a great babyface champion in 96. But heel Shawn in 97 is probably more of his natural character in real life, which is probably why it resonated with us so well, right?
Oh, my God, 100%. Conrad, you know how it is when you and I and Stud Muffin and Gerald Briscoe get on a text thread. It's just a bunch of smartasses and guys taking a shot at each other. Some of the funniest shit I do during the day is get texts from you guys. When you have guys that are just dudes, they're just regular guys, and they're pretty sharp guys, they're biting in what they do. They're sarcastic in what they do. They're smartasses in what they do. Shawn is a guy, just a guy. So is Hunter. And finally, when you put them on air and go, just be what you would want to be. Be what you would be with your buddies watching football or baseball or something else. Or we didn't have text back then, but on a text chain with them where you're sending all kinds of inappropriate stuff and laughing about it. And that was Shawn on camera. You just happen to get out. Shawn was a great babyface, great heel. But when you put him in DX and you put Hunter with him, and all of a sudden now you say, guys, just be what you would be if you could be anything you wanted. And you're in that mode of, I'm going to be a smart ass. I'm going to be fun. I'm going to be smart. I'm going to be whatever I want. That's what we got. And that changed the world when those guys came out like that.
When people talk about peak Shawn Michaels, to me, peak Shawn Michaels is like, we'll call it August of 97, all the way through he gets his back injury and leaves at WrestleMania in 98. So August of 97 through March of 98, I think his attitude and swagger and demeanor and all of that, like it came through the screen. Hey, this guy isn't just cocky. He really believes it. And unfortunately, a little bastard can back it up in the
ring. Yeah, that's the worst of the world. I was backstage when Shawn did that scene where they had the poster up and Shawn was hiding his butt and he would jump up above the poster and moon it. I was backstage watching that. They filmed that in the locker room where we were. We're dying laughing. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's just Shawn being a fun guy, not Shawn being Shawn, just Shawn being a fun guy. It's like, what would we all do? I mean, what do the guys do backstage? What would Kurt Hennig do? What would Piper do? What would Rude do? That's what they were doing. And you got it on camera. And I think that was the appeal of it. I mean, this was the appeal to all those kids out there that were watching going, man, that's what I would do if I could.
Yeah. And by the way, I just think that era of swagger was peak Shawn Michaels. But maybe there was no bigger peak for the Heat than one night only. September 20th, 1997, the British Bulldog is the European champion. And I believe the story on that, and I may have this wrong, but Joe Marshall was trying to get a way into the WWE. He wanted to have the opportunity to make belts for the World Wrestling Federation. Reggie Parks kind of had that business locked down. As the story goes, I believe he just created a European championship and sent it to the office in the hopes that they would dig it and like it and maybe want to use him for something in the future. They liked the belt so much that they gave him the business and they created a European championship as a result. Well, who better to be your first European champion than the British Bulldog? And as the story goes, Davey Boy Smith in real life, his sister had a disease that she was battling and it didn't look good. And she's going to dedicate this match to her. And I think as the story goes, some people were really upset when the finish was changed so Shawn could win. Now, from Shawn's perspective, and I think this is old school wrestling 101, and I think he's gotten a bad, he's taken some bad negative PR here unnecessarily. He suggested that he, as the heel, should win, and then they do a return match, and it'll be even bigger. Now, that to me feels like just wrestling 101 psychology of, hey, we've got to have them something to get them to come back. Yes, let's do that. But that is not the way it was received by everyone in the Hart family or Davey Boy's family, because ultimately Davey's going to wind up leaving the company, and sadly his sister passes away. We know that Shawn is actually going to be injured and on the shelf in just 7 months, and he's out of the company himself. With the benefit of hindsight, if we had known all of that, if we had a crystal ball, maybe we wouldn't have done it. But at the time, that night, the heat that comes in, trash just raining down on Shawn as he walks back up the ramp, holding the European title over his head. How was that perceived in the locker room? Was it split the way we fans perceived, that there were people who thought, man, that's shitty, they shouldn't have done that to Davey, and they were sympathetic to that? Or did people see, hey, it's wrestling, man, we got to have something to come back for? What are you talking about? This is just good business.
Yeah, we perceived it as something that was awesome. Awesome. He's walking out with massive amounts of heat. Yeah. Where else do you spend a huge baby face but to get a huge heel over? Now, if you're going to do a return or not, I don't care if you don't do a return. This isn't like one tick for tag booking. You know, it isn't like, okay, I'm going to put you over here, then I'm going to put you over here. Then everybody's equal. You don't want everybody equal. You want stars. Davey Boy is a huge star, but he had all this equity as a babyface. He had all this storyline as a babyface. Where else do you use this better than to put over a heel? We thought it was great. You know, he's walking out and you're going like, man, if Shawn had walked out and the people had just kind of didn't like it, we'd be sitting there going, they made a bad decision. But when you walk out and Shawn's getting stuff rained down on him, you're like, this guy's going to draw some money off this. And you knew it. We were interested in drawing money. It's a work, 100% of work. You know, Davey's our friend. His family is somebody we love. We're going to, whatever has to happen there, we take care of it. This is a work. This is theater. And when theater works like that, you're going, this is going to draw us some money. That's what we're worried about. We're worried about going out of business against WCW. We're not worried about protecting fans' feelings about, oh, we should be taking care of our baby faces. Yeah, if you do, you kill the governor in The Walking Dead the first show of the season, not go 2 seasons with it. You don't get storyline out of it. You don't make money with it.
Let's talk about where the name comes from. I think Degeneration X is actually something created almost by Owen Hart, because there's an episode on October 6th, 1997, where Owen Hart refers to Shawn Michaels as nothing more than a degenerate. So the following week, October 13th, that's when Shawn Michaels reveals that this group is actually called Degeneration X. What do you think of the name Degeneration X?
I loved it. It's kind of like, I don't want to get into politics, who's right or who's wrong, but it's kind of like the Hillary Clinton deplorables. All of a sudden now, all of Trump's people are going, yeah, we're deplorables. Yeah, we're all going to vote. We're deplorables. I mean, sometimes people embrace names that are outcast from society. And that's what this was. This was the Canadians that called us degeneration. Yeah, we're Degeneration X. I thought it was brilliant the way they did it.
We got to spend just a minute here and talk about what's going to be happening. We're not far away from the Montreal screw job. Of course, we're in October of 97. We know that about a month after the group is officially named, that's when the screw job happens. And we know that for whatever reason, Rick Rude is going to take a stand that night. He's not happy about what's happened to Bret Hart. He feels like it maybe breaks some sort of trust with the office and the boys. And he's actually going to jump ship to WCW. And I think that may or may not have gotten some heat on Jim Ross for not having Rick Rude on a permanent contract since he'd been on TV. So I wanted to ask, as far as you knew, how common was it in that era for WWF talent to have per appearance fees, like, or per appearance contracts? Like, I know for sure that there are contracts in wrestling today that aren't guaranteed, where you're getting a check every 2 weeks for X number of years or whatever it may be. No, you're not even under contract. We just call you and say, hey, we want to use you this week on so and so, and you have a rate, and they pay you there when you get there. Was that common in 97? Was Rude the last one that you can remember?
Yeah, and I was surprised that Rude was. Of course, Jeff's contract ran out, the day after the pay-per-view. Unbelievable timing. But that was just a timing issue. We didn't have guys that had that. We had guys that were under either one of the two contracts. Guaranteed contracts had just come in. Mark Merrow was the first guaranteed contract, as far as I know, that came in. And, I think now I was told it's $300,000. I don't know if that's true or not. So I don't want to better repeat that, but that's what I heard at the time, which was more than the rest of us were making. And we didn't care because we thought, if he comes in with a guaranteed contract, we're going to get guaranteed contracts next. So it wasn't like a jealousy thing. I just heard that number. And so I don't know if that part is true or not, but Merrill was the first guaranteed contract that came in, but everybody who came in was under some type of booking contract. It was that old booking contract, which, for those that don't know, you're guaranteed 10 shows a year at $150 a show. That's all you're guaranteed. You're guaranteed $1,500 a year. Now you could make, whatever you made, but Vince locked guys under contracts. Vince was very good about that. So I was really surprised that Rude was not under some type of booking contract, either a guaranteed contract or at least the old booking contract, because that cost you nothing to sign a guy to a year contract for a booking contract, especially considered your downside guarantee was $1,500. Try explaining that to your dad, who's a community banker, that you turn down guaranteed money for $1,500. That didn't go well for me.
So Rick Rude, allegedly, after the Montreal Screwjob, calls Eric Bischoff. That's what Eric has said on 83 Weeks. He's disgusted. He wants to leave the WWF. Do you remember, or how do you remember hearing that Rick Rude was on Nitro? Now, for those of you who don't remember, he's going to appear on a taped episode of Monday Night Raw with facial hair one way, and then he's going to appear on Monday Night Nitro the very same night that's live, and his facial hair is completely different. He went from a full mustache and beard to just the mustache on the same night. Little tip of the cap to Eazy-E, who you see grinning like a possum in the background, thinking, boy, look what we've pulled off here. I know you guys were head down running with the ball, but when and how do you find out Rick Rude was on both shows on the same night during the Monday Night Wars? What a moment that was.
We found out the minute, he didn't have I don't even think he had anything with the internet back then. Certainly didn't have, hardly any cell phones. Most people didn't. People didn't use them because they cost so much. But we found out right away when Rude was on both shows. We thought it was tremendous. Hey, and kudos to Rick Rude. A lot of guys, guys after that Montreal Screwjob said, this is terrible. I'm going to walk out. And Rude did. Rude's a stand-up dude, kind of like Roy McIlroy with the Live group, when PGA decided to go ahead and, do business with him. And Roy stood by his guns, whether you like Roy or not. He stood by his guns and said, hey, I still hate him. I'm not going to do business with him. And, Rude was a stand-up dude. I remember Rude backstage one time, and somebody had done a promo, and Rude goes, so let me get this right. You now can walk out onto live television and say whatever you want with any language you want and mean it as a shoot. And that's how we do promos. And somebody goes, yeah. He goes, got it. Unbelievable. But yeah, we heard about it right away. And we all thought it was awesome. I mean, it sucks for us because we lost another huge star. Yeah. And Eric had pulled off a freaking massive coup. Kudos to Eric Bischoff for this. But for us, it was we thought it was pretty cool, but we had lost another big star. And plus we're losing Brett, and I just thought the world was ending when we lost Brett.
It is interesting to take a look at the parallels between the way they built the NWO and the way they're going to build DX. We had a totally different style of ring entrance with much different music. And of course, the NWO shirt became a big part of their presentation. Like when you join the group, you put the shirt on, sort of thing, like it was almost a biker club. But DX is going to embrace that here too. And that's just the very first DX shirt. Of course, they're promoting the words "suck it," which is certainly something that Shawn Michaels and Triple H were doing a lot on TV in this era. But this comes out around the same time as the In Your House Degeneration X pay-per-view. Now, you may recall, as you take a look at the end of 1996, on the shadows of the heels of Survivor Series 96, which was originally supposed to be Vader beating Shawn Michaels for the world title. Well, the December pay-per-view in 96 was In Your House, It's Time. Maybe it was a clue to Brett, with the benefit of hindsight, that the pay-per-view that follows Survivor Series the very next year is called In Your House Degeneration X. One way or another, we're pushing this group, and this is where the edginess of the Attitude Era starts to really be appreciated. Because if we can have our crack producer Silva throw that shirt back up there, I don't think we've ever seen a shirt like this in WWE before. Now, I know that we're going to start to get a lot of edgy shirts and a lot of double entendres and things like that. But just printing a shirt that says "suck it" on it, and they even have an asterisk there for the U and suck. They're trying to censor themselves a little bit, but this is really a departure from the type of merch that WWE was selling at their height, whether it was the golden era in the 80s or in the new generation era. It has a bit of an edge. Did you feel that as a performer, or was that just, does that not even something you're recognizing at the time that, hey, we're getting a little edgier even with our merch?
Oh, yes, 100%. I mean, we knew it. The first thing that happened was Goldust. Goldust started doing right after the Montreal Screwjob, started going crazy with the craziness, sexiness, over the top sexual antics that he was doing. And after that, we realized, man, it is carte blanche. I mean, you just had carte blanche to do whatever you want. I remember one time, I believe it was Triple H that said something literally right before we went live on a thing. He goes, we have an 8-second delay or 5-second, whatever delay was. And they go, yeah. He said, fuck you on the show. But he'd check first to make sure there was the delay. I mean, this is cable television, but that was okay. As long as it was creative and wasn't done gratuitously. Nowadays, I mean, I see all these freaking guys now. Everybody's flipping somebody off like this, that. When Steve did it, it was awesome. But when everybody on the card's doing it, I wouldn't do it once, because all you're doing is copying everybody else. But back then, when guys saw this, you had creative guys. As long as it wasn't gratuitous, you could get away with basically anything you wanted to do as long as it was entertaining.
It's wild to think how much wrestling changed in this era, because even though, a lot of people would believe, and it's hard to argue, the DX was sort of created in the image of the NWO. NWO shirts were not banned in my high school, but DX shirts were. You couldn't be walking around wearing shirts that said "suck it" on it in high school.
And what great marketing tool is that?
Yes.
I mean, to get it banned in high schools, that's the greatest marketing tool there is. Not that WWE had anything to do with it, but that was awesome.
No doubt. With the benefit of hindsight, the Attitude Era in large part is going to enjoy their greatest success and their biggest peak. And I know that people always immediately give credit to Stone Cold Steve Austin, but you got to think, if there is a Mount Rushmore, if you will, of the people who helped usher in the Attitude Era, it's got Goldust, it's got Steve Austin, and it's probably got Shawn and Hunter, don't you think?
100%. Yeah, those three guys, and counting DX as one guy or entity, those three guys changed the business, and they weren't the same. You had Goldust doing all this crazy over-the-top sexual antics. You had DX being overage juveniles that could fight. Then you had Stone Cold just being the ultimate badass that cussed all the time and drank beer on television. I mean, these were three very distinct guys. They're not guys that are copying each other. They're sitting there, the creative guys that had this creative outlet that no longer were restrained by a PG model, saying basically, do whatever you want, long as we can beat those guys down south, long as we can be entertaining, and as long as we can draw ratings. And that's what guys were doing. And, I've heard interviews Shawn and Hunter have done. They weren't talking about what are we going to do for ratings. They were talking about what are we going to do that's entertaining? What are we going to do that entertains us? And I think that was the key. I've always thought Michael Jordan, same time period, was the greatest basketball player of all time, arguably. But when Michael Jordan was playing and is at his peak, he's got a tongue hanging out. He's flying through the air. You pay a fortune to go watch him play. But when you're watching him play and that tongue's hanging out, you're going, man, this guy's just loving what he's doing. You walk out of that arena thinking, that every penny I spent was well worth it. When you watch DX during this time, they were having so much fun. Stone Cold was having so much fun. that when you walk out of the arena, it's not just like, oh, I saw a great performance. You go, no, I saw a great performance by guys who were just incredibly passionate about what they were doing. And that's infectious to crowds. And I think that was a huge appeal of these guys.
I do want to take just a minute here and talk about something that wasn't always perceived as awesome. We're going to talk about a storyline that maybe some people were offended by. These are old school wrestling purists, but there's a December 22nd, 1997 episode of Monday Night Raw. As you may remember, Sergeant Slaughter has been our on-air figurehead commissioner. There's been a series of interactions with DX and Sergeant Slaughter. Sergeant Slaughter is now going to dictate that Shawn Michaels has not defended his European title in X number of days, so he's got to defend it tonight, and he's going to wrestle Triple H. So Shawn Michaels and Triple H have a mock match on TV, sort of making fun of wrestling and making fun of the silliness of this, and Triple H wins. Now, I understand that this is a storyline, and they're the bad guys, and it's a wink and a nod that, hey, I'm just letting my buddy win here. But I'm sure if this were to happen today on television, there would be podcasters who lost their absolute mind about this and say that they're making a mockery of the business and things like that. But this happened way back in 1997. Did you take issue with the mock match between Triple H and Hunter, or did you get, hey, it's a story, chill out, who cares?
I had no issue whatsoever. I watched it and thought it was great. Every bit of it. I mean, I don't have an issue with this.
They're heels.
They're heels, and they're making fun of wrestling. They're making fun of wrestling fans. And fans left and go, I don't appreciate that. I didn't like that at all. Okay, so a lot of wrestling fans, they want you to be a heel as long as you don't actually offend them.
Yes.
They want you to offend the guy next to him and them kind of be in on it. Like, you know, hey, man, that guy's a good heel. He got the guy next to the guy next to me is really mad because he's stupid and he's a mark. You know, but when you get them, it's like, I don't appreciate that. That's not a heel. That's just classless. The whole thing is, if you understand a person's a heel, they're not a heel. Heels, you don't understand are heels. You don't like them. And this, to me, was perfect in that regard. You had fans that were so upset about this going, no, this isn't being a heel. I just think they're assholes.
Yeah,
you're right. Would you watch them get beat? Oh, yeah, I'd watch them get beat. You're right. They're not workers.
We should mention they're going to continue to terrorize Sergeant Slaughter, calling him Sergeant Slobber. They're going to wear masks with little windshield wipers on them. It's hilarious stuff. They're going to throw Michaels into a shower, or Michael Cole, rather, when he's fully clothed.
Did they torture Michael Cole?
I mean, it's a shame that we didn't have Johnny Photo there to snap more photos. As you mentioned, they're going to be showing their asses. Sean's going to stick a Canadian flag up his nose. I mean, they're having a lot of fun. But maybe one of the biggest moments that we saw was February 2nd, 1998. There's a segment that airs on Monday Night Raw. I guess it's referred to as the DX apology. So this is the same era where Bill Clinton had to address the media about some things that he may or may not have done with Monica Lewinsky. And so we're going to recreate that as like a mock presidential press conference. And Hunter and Shawn are going to be talking about the standards and practices crackdown from USA and TSN and other areas that broadcast the show. And they're going to sarcastically promise to only use the words ass, damn, and hell during certain hours. Of course, this is all in response to the criticism that they have been getting about the adult-themed content. I love that they just lean into it. Apparently, WWE got this approved by USA as well. They are bleeping out the really bad words. I thought this was fun. It felt like a Mad TV skit, and I dug it. I wish that wrestling today had more of this. It feels like if this were to happen today, it would have to happen in the middle of the ring. Like, it feels like every promo in wrestling, like Monday Night Raw for the last 25 years has started with wrestler A comes to the ring with a microphone and talks for 15 minutes and sets up a match. And that became the formula for Monday Night Raw. But when you start with something like this, boy, that's about as pedal to the metal attitude as it gets, right?
Oh my God, this is a shot across the bow. You know, the USA was in on it, you know, but this, you know, I saw a thing the other day where Lawler's about to slap Andy Kaufman, and the narrative underneath it was, if this happened today, the next day they go on a podcast and explain how it was all set up, how Letterman was in on it, how everybody played their role really well. You know, screw that, man. You need some. That's why I miss stuff like this, of when they're taking shots at this. this was hilarious. And I also remember there was plausible deniability always going on in a circle back then. So Stone Cold would go out there and say something crazy. Hunter and Shawn go out there and say something crazy. USA Network would call Vince. Vince would say, "Oh, look, the guys just went out there and just ad-libbed. It's live television. I'll talk to them." And so then USA would have plausible deniability. Vince would have plausible deniability. Everybody may have known it was going to happen, but it was all a big circle. Everybody would blame it on the next person, all the way around back to the circle where you get back to back going, "Okay, we dealt with it." No, you didn't.
We should remind you that in 1997, Eric Bischoff really doubled down on mainstream when he decided to involve Dennis Rodman in WCW. Dennis Rodman was, and I know that people are going to give a lot of credit to Karl Malone, and not to take anything away from Karl Malone. Incredible basketball player, maybe not the best human, worth a Google, but incredible basketball player. But Dennis Rodman could court media attention in that era like nobody else. Now, these days, some of these antics wouldn't be seen as crazy and over the top, but showing up to your book signing in a wedding dress, boy, you're courting attention. Doing all the crazy hair dyes, having the famous girlfriend, the off the field antics of missing practice. And there's lots of silliness surrounding Dennis Rodman, but they made him into a media sensation. Well, Vince's response to that, because allegedly he tried to get Rodman to do something with Goldust. Instead, Rodman is more familiar with Hogan, goes the NWO way. Vince responds with Mike Tyson. Yes, Dennis Rodman joined the NWO, but Mike Tyson joined DX. On March 2nd, 1998, Mike Tyson and Shawn Michaels have a confrontation in the ring. It looks like they're about to come to blows when Shawn rips off Mike Tyson's T-shirt to reveal a DX shirt underneath. Now, at the time, WCW is still firmly in control. This is March 2nd, 1998. We're still in the middle of that unprecedented 83-week run where Nitro was beating Monday Night Raw. I'm saying all of that to say when DX brought out Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson has that shoving match a couple of months prior with Steve Austin on Monday Night Raw, Kevin Nash, Kevin Sullivan, and others felt like that might be the beginning of the end. Mike Tyson is a guy who had been at the center of pay-per-view and controversy because just the prior June is when he bit Evander Holyfield's ear. So not only is he the biggest pay-per-view attraction in the history of pay-per-view, now he's with WWE and because he's kicked out of boxing for biting a dude. Like this is made for WWE. Did it feel like a major moment at the time? Like, could you feel, even though WCW was ahead in the ratings, did it feel like Mike Tyson was sort of the ace up Vince's sleeve to you in the locker room at the time?
Yeah, I mean, this was the baddest man on the planet. I mean,
yes.
there was no denying it. Tyson was the biggest pay-per-view draw of all time at that point. You go through boxing heavyweights. I'm a huge boxing fan, a huge Mike Tyson fan. I mean, there was nothing like Tyson. I mean, there hadn't been anything like Tyson since Ali that captured the public's imagination. I mean, Tyson was everything to people. And he was so freaking charismatic. He just had a presence about him. Tyson, when he came in, such a cool dude. He was sitting back there playing bones with the guys, playing dominoes with the guys. And he's just a regular guy. Jack Lanza walks in, and it was like a Catholic kid meeting the Pope. Tyson gets up and walks over and he goes, "Mr. Lanza, I've been a big fan for a long time." He sat there and just, it was awesome. Jack, Dad sits there talking to Jack's the nicest man, met a million celebrities, Jack was just so nice to him. Tyson was the most respectful, kind human being. It was unbelievable having backstage. By the way, when they did that push and pull apart it was in Fresno, California, I believe. Tyson had about $10,000 fall out of his pockets. He had all these hundreds in his pocket. I guess he had his hands in his pockets, had a big roll, like Akbar used to carry, maybe not 10,000. I guess when Tyson pulled it out, all the shit fell out of his pocket. So there's like $10,000 in the ring. Some guys are trying to figure out how to get all the money out of it, get it back to Mike.
I love that so much. Let's talk a little bit about the end of this version of DX. We know Mike Tyson is going to reveal that he's actually with Cold Stone at WrestleMania 14. Shawn Michaels is hurt. His back is out because of that errant fall he had on the casket match. So when the Stone Cold era begins at WrestleMania 14, it feels like this is the end for Shawn Michaels. He even during the post WrestleMania press conference makes it clear that he's out of here. He's retiring. And he is going to be gone for quite a while. When you realize that, hey, Shawn's gone, did you think he would ever be back? Or did you think, oh no, he's really hurt. He's had his fill. That's it. Because it doesn't feel like it ended the way he wanted to. He even stormed into that post WrestleMania press conference by kicking the door. He's not happy. It feels like the company has sort of moved on. And I know that he was battling some stuff at the time personally. So he had a lot of other layers to this story. But did you think when Shawn left, that was the end of Shawn in the WWF?
I was hoping it wasn't, and I didn't know. You know, I'd understood Shawn's sentiment completely. Here's a guy who his whole life had wanted to be the guy, and he had the ability to be the guy forever. And all of a sudden he becomes the guy, and his body gives out on him. I mean, that sucks. I mean, that sucks to reach the top of the mountain, and as soon as you get there, go, by the way, you got to come down, and you're not going back up. And because of his body gave out on him. I mean, Shawn's injuries cost us, and I'm talking about fans in wrestling, some of the greatest matchups of all time. I mean, Imagine Shawn Michaels being healthy during the Attitude Era with Stone Cold. I mean, that would have been, that would have been awesome to see that. It was a huge loss. You know, it's just one more loss after another. You know, we'd lost Brett, we'd lost Scott and Kevin. Now we've lost Shawn. Now we're starting to get the momentum because of Tyson and DX, and Steve was getting really freaking hot at that point. So you're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, but it's just another major loss to us. I'm sitting there thinking, I've never seen guys leave a territory like this. I've never seen this many top stars leave. And I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. You know, I remember talking to Lanza about it and saying, Brett's leaving. I mean, what are we going to do? And Lanza pointed to, we were sitting there in a place where we could see Vince, that gorilla. He goes, as long as that guy's in that chair, he goes, we're going to be fine. And it made me feel a lot better. I still wasn't sure of it, but it made me feel a lot better.
We know that it feels like when Shawn's leaving, well, DX has got to be finished. That's not actually what happens. The very next night on Monday Night Raw, it's revealed that Triple H is picking up the reins, and we get the return of Sean Waltman. He cuts a work shoot promo that people are still talking about to these days. I mean, I think that there was even a lawsuit involved in that, but that's a story for another time. You know, with the benefit of hindsight, could you have ever predicted that DX, after being some of the most successful heels in the history of the company, would ever become the mega baby faces they would be in just a few months?
Yes. Yeah. I could see that coming, because you could see people out there, they were such good heels, and they were just too entertaining. You realize these guys could probably have one hell of a baby face run. I thought it'd be longer than what it came out. I've just been surprised about the way they morphed from one thing to another. Losing Shawn was, how do you lose Shawn Michaels and not only continue, but you can argue we reached new heights after that?
No doubt.
It was really remarkable. You know, X-Pac is he's the Buddy Roberts of the Freebirds. You know, and when I say that, I mean the MVP.
Yes,
not like the little guy. He was the shit disturber. He was a shit disturber for NWO. He was a shit disturber for DX. Sean Waltman is
the secret sauce.
Yes. I don't know how you can say he's underrated, because he's in the freaking Hall of Fame once or twice already. But Sean Waltman is one of the greatest of all time. He is such a good. Oh my God, I'm going to see him and Buddy Roberts together talking somewhere. It would be awesome.
I'm a huge fan of Sean Waltman in real life. If you have an opportunity to catch him in real life at a meet and greet or a fan convention or something like that, go out of your way. Such a great guy. You will not regret spending time with Sean. It is interesting to think this original version of DX was so short-lived. I mean, I think officially they're formed, as we mentioned, they're called DX in October. And really by March, the whole thing looks differently. I mean, even if you go back to August, you know, where they first start to pair together, by March, the thing's done. And of course, there is going to be another version, but that original core group, I mean, Rick Rude's only there from August till November, so he's there for 3 months. But man, he made it count. And I think that original core group of DX, I'm talking about Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Chyna, and Rick Rude, that's still probably my favorite version of DX. But I do think that they helped usher in a new era of pro wrestling. We mentioned that Stone Cold Steve Austin's kind of the same way. There's a pretty famous story out there that one of the agents, and I forget exactly who it was, told Steve when he's going on a tear in 1996 with Bret Hart and really starting to rise into that main event status. But he's doing it as a heel against the beloved babyface Bret Hart. I think someone told Austin, hey, you're going to get over and you're going to be a huge babyface. And that was unfathomable to Austin at the time. All he's doing is despicable heel stuff. What do you mean? But he was so good. He was so entertaining that fans got with it. They did it with DX too. And I think that's an interesting case study that as the company started to embrace the Attitude Era, so did the fans. And on the NWO, they were the cool heels. DX and Steve Austin, they became the cool heels and eventually just baby faces, right?
Yeah, and they didn't become milquetoast baby faces.
That's right.
I see some of these guys, they're badass heels, and all of a sudden they become baby faces and they become a complete different character. You're a baby face because of who you are. And it's about the character, not you as a person behind the character. You're a baby face because of your great work as a heel. Then all of a sudden people will change and become this baby face and, symbolically start kissing babies and all this shit. It just kills them. Those guys didn't change. Steve didn't change. DX didn't change. And that's why the fans embraced them so much.
Well, maybe it's time for you to look for a change. If you're struggling with credit card debt, we can help at savewithconrad.com. How about making the equity in your house work for you and roll everything into one low monthly payment? If you take a look at this chart right here, you'll see where household debt balances have increased by $167 billion in the first quarter of 2025. We're talking about $18 trillion in household debt. I'm talking to you if you're struggling with credit card debt. Man, there is a way out at savewithconrad.com. We can show you how to use the equity in your house to make life a whole heck of a lot easier. Just ask McIntyre. He's our plumber buddy from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. He had a baby on the way and needed a new car. So rather than go take out new debt, he went to savewithconrad.com. Me and my team were able to show him how to use the equity that he built up in his place to get that new car, to pay off some debt, to skip a couple of house payments, and lower his payments by over $1,000 a month. Think about that. If life has thrown you a curveball and you find yourself struggling to make your minimum payments, or you feel like you're maxed out on your credit cards, or maybe you've just got some real life needs, like you do need a car, your house does need repair, or you do have a new baby on the way and you need to save some cash, Save with Conrad can help. And my team can run the numbers for you absolutely free, no cost, no obligation. And if we can't save you some cash, we won't waste your time. And I recently had a conversation with one of our longtime listeners who was able to save a boatload of money. And he said, I wish I would have done this years ago. And I asked, why didn't you? And he said, man, I had credit card debt. I was embarrassed. I feel like I know you. I didn't want you to know that I was drowning in debt. Man, that's my job. I want to help you. I want to show you the way to get out of debt, stay out of debt, and pay your house off faster with cheaper monthly payments. If you're listening to this and you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can help you save money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at savewithconrad.com. NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender, savewithconrad.com. And did I mention you get a 3-year guarantee? That's right. If interest rates improve at any point in the next 3 years, we'll throw you another refinance without charging you a whole new set of closing costs. It's going to give you the peace of mind of knowing you've got the best deal for you and your family right now, but you can also go ahead and get a much cheaper rate and a much better monthly payment without ever paying a second set of closing costs. We can hook that up for you right now at savewithconrad.com. You can even shoot us an email at conrad@savewithconrad.com or give us a call toll free at 888-425-0105, savewithconrad.com. So listen, we've got some live questions here and we got to talk about what's happening this weekend. But before we get to that, I do want to ask you specifically something that has become a bit of a debate. And I know you've got a take on this. WWE later this month is going to reveal a new show on Netflix called WWE Unreal. It's going to be a behind-the-scenes look into how the sausage is made in WWE Creative. There's been a report out that says they're going to give us a peek inside of some major moments, maybe someone's return, maybe a title switch, maybe a Royal Rumble. I forget the specifics, but pivotal moments that have happened in the last year. We'll see how all of that was created. Now, is that good or bad? Is it a net positive or negative for wrestling? Has been debated. Well, recently, WWE Hall of Famer and legend Jake the Snake Roberts had this to say about the project. He says, it's foolish, saying that no amount of money made from the show will warrant the damage it will do. But former WWE superstar Ryback has a different viewpoint, and I want your take on this, John. Ryback wrote, I truly believe WWE Unreal is one of the best things for wrestling and wrestlers. This is physical acting, the hardest thing in the world. We play roles, and it takes all of us. No one really wins or loses. And it's time fans and dirt sheets stop the hate and understand what this is. It's no different than movies. You're given a role, and depending on your contract, sometimes you know exactly what it is. Other times it's week to week. But no one shames actors for playing a bad guy or a small part. It takes everyone. Wrestling is one giant production. Where do you land on this, John? Do you side with Ryback on this?
No, I side more with Jake, but I'm not as hard lined as Jake is, and I have a lot of respect for Jake. He's one of the greatest minds in wrestling today. Jake is unbelievable how smart Jake is. It was great working with Jake back in the day. I learned so much. It was such an honor to work with him. But you look at what they're doing now, and is business huge in spite of what they're doing or because of what they're doing? And I'm not talking about the great matches that they're putting on. I'm talking about all the behind the scenes stuff. I don't know the answer. I don't know what the answer is I'm against it. I think it's too much, but they're selling out arenas back to back. I mean, they're selling out 60,000 people on big shows back to back nights. That's unheard of in this business. So they're doing something, and I don't know if it's and again, I don't know if it's in spite of this or because of this. Now, and the one thing that I would disagree with about people that say this is great is that, you kind of want the air of something could go wrong. You kind of want when Houdini does the milk can trick where you be in the milk can, that he might actually drown, that there is some element of danger. And there is in this. We work in the round. We don't work with the benefit of camera angles. We can use camera angles on certain things, but not like movies where, guys never get touched. So you have fans that are sitting 3 feet from you, a lot of contact, a lot of very, stiff things happen, a lot of injuries. That adds an element to it that's different from movies because now you know that this guy, this stunt person, this actor, something could happen. And also you understand there could be a receipt there. There could be some little animosity there. There could be some things. And I like that mystique about it. I don't know if that takes away from that. Maybe it doesn't. I think with this, it's going to be easier to work people than ever before because now you're telling them, okay, here's what we're doing. Here's the whole kimono opening up. Here's the whole show. But now all of a sudden, if you want to work people because they're so on the inside, it's easier than ever. So I have absolute mixed feelings about it. I tend to be more like Jake, not as hard lined, but I also look at it and go, they're doing something right.
It is going to be interesting to see how WWE Unreal unravels. We're going to be talking about it here in the coming weeks on the program. Let's go ahead and do some questions here. We got K Esperado 100 who was with us here live. He says, "Hey JBL and Conrad, listening live from the UK. Bored at work, LOL. Was there anyone in the locker room that tried to pitch themselves to be a part of DX that was unsuccessful?" Now, that's funny. Do you remember hearing anybody campaigning to be a part of the group?
That's true. Oh my God. Hunter and Shawn had to have that. X-Pac had to have it because a lot of guys, would use guys they think might be an easy entree into it. Shawn was incredibly Machiavellian. He just did what he thought was the right thing for business. Irrespective, it didn't matter who it was or what was the outcome. So you always try to find the easiest entree. Maybe that was X-Pac. You'd try to buddy up to him and figure a way into DX. If I'm trying to figure out if you're trying to get into DX, how you would get into it, or buddy up to the guys. I don't know anybody that ever tried to get DX that never made it. So I don't know anybody that tried to get DX that did make it. I don't know if Road Dogg and Billy were actually active trying to be in it. I think they just kind of included them. So I don't know. There, a lot of times guys would hang around groups hoping to become part of that group, and they never do. And it's always kind of funny to watch.
Another question here from the boss. Would the Bradshaw character have worked as a heavy for DX during the Attitude Era before becoming an acolyte? In an alternate universe, could that have worked, John?
Oh, 100%. I think, yeah, it could. Yeah. And me and Ron would have been very good with DX as the two heavies, like a Rick Rude was, or like a China was. I think we'd have been pretty good heavies for those guys. Plus, like Rick, we could interact pretty well with these guys. We could do some fun stuff with them. It'd have been fun to be part of DX. Maybe, I don't know about in addition to the ministry, not in lieu of going to the ministry.
Men of the Night 47 wants to know, if you were offered that spot in DX, would you have taken it? And how do you think your career would have been different if you did?
Oh my God, 100%. I'd take it. I guess me and Ron were doing stuff then, so it'd have to be me and Ron. I wouldn't have done it just by myself because but if they'd offered me and Ron that spot, oh my God, yes, those guys were fun. We'd watch them in the back. Like I say, I was sitting there watching in the back when Shawn did the famous moon thing backstage, and we were just laughing like crazy. It was fun to watch. So yeah, I would have joined in a heartbeat if they would have asked me. They never asked me, but I only would have done it if Ron would have been included too, which I assume he would have. But of course, they might have just taken Ron without me.
Well, just to get your timeline right, I don't think you actually started doing the Acolyte thing until later in '98. Then
100%. Yeah, they weren't doing anything with me. I was doing nothing.
Yeah.
I'd have been glad to be part of anything. I'd have been part of Skip and Zip if they'd asked me.
I love you for that. Josh Shea wants to know, were DX seen as Vince's guys with all the creative things they were able to do? And in doing that, did they receive heat from the rest of the locker room? That's something we've heard a lot, that, it was positioned at times where it was like, well, Shawn is Vince's boy. I mean, that's certainly the narrative that was out there. How much heat did they have in the locker room based on Shawn's perceived relationship with him?
They only had heat with the guys that had personnel problems with him. Shawn had personal issue with Brett, and that was the only heat that there was. I was in several meetings with Shawn and Vince, and Shawn spoke to Vince like nobody I've ever heard. I mean, Shawn could talk to Vince in a way that most people couldn't, but he was very clear about what he wanted. Shawn talked business with Vince. He didn't abuse that relationship. Shawn had a very unique relationship with Vince, and I didn't see any heat over that, because Shawn was all about business. I mean, he wanted to do business, and I would see him there with Vince, and I would see him argue business, and most guys wouldn't argue like that. And if Shawn was right, Vince would cede it to him and give it to him.
How silly and juvenile and stupid is it? I mean, I'm sure you've heard it before, but when people would say things like, "Oh, Shawn has a unique relationship with Vince," there were the haters out there who said, "Oh, they're more than just friends." Isn't that stupid? I mean, why do we always go to that? That's just dumb.
Same way we go to wieners and poo.
I guess, right? Jeff Heelan wants to know, can the APA be the top tag team in a WWE event today? How about a comeback run? Do you think there's ever a chance we see you and Ron throwing some clotheslines and dominators one last time? Not a real match, but just here and there.
I would love to see Ron throw a punch or two. I don't know if you saw a picture the other day. The other day we were sitting there with Danny Trejo at a.
His arms are huge.
Ron's got the biggest freaking arms. I didn't realize his arms were still that big till I saw that picture. We took the picture with Danny, and I forgot my hat, which of course Road Dogg brought up because the only thing bigger than Ron's arms is your bucket head, and which is probably true. But I was sitting there when I first saw the picture. I want to make sure it came out okay after Danny had left. And I said, Ron, look at your arms. Oh, my God. That's unbelievable. So, yeah, I'd love to see Ron still throw some punches. I don't know if he wants to do much more of anything else. He's very happy doing what he's doing. But, yeah, I'd love to see Ron do something.
Instagram, a wrestling historian, wants to know, what if Bradshaw had joined DX? We've sort of ran through all of that. Alex wants to know, can we see the rescue kitty? Is Briscoe the cat around?
Briscoe the cat is around. Would you bring me Briscoe the cat? This is Briscoe the cat. We call him Baby Briscoe, and because he's tiny. But yes, I rescued this cat here. And come here, buddy. Come here, buddy. Look here. This is Briscoe.
My God.
This is Briscoe. Little baby Briscoe. See, look, Briscoe. Look at him. Look at him, buddy. Yeah. This is Briscoe. Little bitty tiny cat. I don't
even know what happened. I feel like you're the Inspector Gadget villain just petting a cat right now. Like
we just got him. And what should we name him? What else do you name a legendary cat but Briscoe?
I mean, listen, I know that we're live here at somethingtowrestle.com, but I got to ask, do you always have a studio audience when we're doing a show?
Absolutely. I have a lot of helpers around. They're at my house. I have like 16 people here just waiting to bring me stuff. And there's like a whole bit all sitting in chairs out here, just off camera here, trying to help me bring me drinks or bring me cats or whatever I need. Yeah.
I'll be honest. Had I known that Mrs. Layfield could hear anything I was saying, I certainly wouldn't have used all the language I did today.
Well, in fairness, the talk earlier that was a little more X-rated, she was not here then. So she was upstairs. She just came downstairs.
We got to have
She came downstairs actually to check on Briscoe, little baby Briscoe.
Okay.
She can't go that long without checking on Briscoe, so she came down to check on Briscoe.
I got you. In the future, we got to have some sort of, I think it's called in wrestling, the Iggy.
That's right.
I know. Okay, not right.
He's here. Don't bring up Batista's dick.
Can you imagine if you had to explain to her what half of the things we talk about are? On
Oh my God! Especially the thing about Batista. I don't understand it myself.
Yeah, I haven't told you this story before, but Megan does medical research, so she's got a lot of the girls at the office that she works with, and they know that I do mortgages and podcasts. But they were curious one day, so they said, "So how does he do a podcast? What does that mean? Does he have a studio, or how does it happen? Where does he have to go?" She's like, "No, he does it from home. He's got a home office in the house. He does it there." And they're like, "Oh, that's so cool. How does it work?" And from Megan's perspective, she's like, "It's not what you think." And they're like, "No, it's awesome." And she's like, "Well, we'll just be at the dinner table." She's talking about her and Morgan, her daughter, eating dinner. And all of a sudden I just yell, "Guys, you want to know how to get your dick real, real hard?" That's probably not what they imagined a podcast is, but it is here on Something to Wrestle with Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, it's like sometimes like, well, I'm saying, "How was your podcast?" It was fine. It was fine. Just don't, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about it. It was good. It's over. I'm free the rest of the day. What do you have in mind today, honey?
That's right. What did you discuss? What would you like to do? Would you like to go to dinner?
Old stories. Yeah.
Yeah. Boring stuff.
Boring stuff. Aaron Sheen wants to know, which version of DX, John, was your favorite? The original, or the one with the Outlaws, or the 2006 revival with Shawn and Hunter?
Good question. I'm going to take the one with the Outlaws.
Okay.
I really enjoyed Billy and Road Dogg being part of DX. I wish Shawn had been a part of that too, but I love Billy and Road Dogg in the New Age in the DX.
Ask a Bum wants to know, how much did Ric Flair influence your rich guy gimmick, John?
None. And no offense to Ric Flair at all. I got my influences on this were three things. I grew up in West Texas, and I grew up around when the oil fields were big when I was a kid. They thought they were depleted when I was in high school, became very poor out there. That was before they figured out how to sideways drill and frack, and now they have more oil than Saudi Arabia. But when I was in high school, they thought the oil wells were depleted. But when I was a kid, back when the oil wells were still pumping, you had two DeLoreans in a town of 10,000 people, two Lamborghinis and a DeLorean in a town of 10,000 people. Even these guys were just redneck rich, and they flaunted money like crazy in front of people. I didn't really like those guys. I thought they were assholes. And I always thought if I was ever a bad guy in wrestling, that's who I would be. I got from that, and I also got, obviously, from Ted DiBiase and J.R. Ewing. Those were my three influences, more so than the Nature Boy.
Let's do another one here. Alex wants to know, John, are you investing in any AI stocks? What are your thoughts on AI pertaining to the market?
The AI is as big as everybody says it is. I mean, and the thing that's different is, around 1900, you had Carnegie and Rockefeller and all these guys who became the richest men, basically in the history of the world. Maybe people, kings back in the day when had gold first discovered in northern Africa that might have had more money, but you don't know that for sure. But these are the richest guys in the history of the world. That's because the U.S. became a whole village. No longer it was just regional. Well, now you're seeing guys like Bezos and Musk and Zuckerberg become several times what those guys become, because now the globe is a village. And so now you have a global world that people are making money off of. I don't understand AI as well. And I don't know. I think you're going to see a lot of people make trillions, literally trillions of dollars. Corporations, maybe not people, but trillions of dollars made in AI. But you're also going to see a lot of losers. And I just don't know if I'm smart enough to invest in AI. I wasn't that good with the internet when it came out in the 90s. I didn't touch it. And sure enough, it went bust. I don't think AI is going bust, but you're going to see a lot of losers. So I'm not big. I'll delve into companies that have a little bit of AI, like Google has a big AI presence as part of their company. I invested in Google a while back, which has been a terrific investment because one reason was because of the AI. But I'm not good enough just to invest in just pure AI stocks, but it is as big as everybody says it is.
We see there's a comment here that says, can we get more of a what if episode from Storytime with John on a full episode of those? I do think we've had so many fun what ifs. We should maybe put together a what if show. Chris is with us here live, and he wants to know, do you have any Owen Hart rib stories? That's interesting. What is your favorite Owen Hart rib story?
I tagged with Owen, and this wasn't my favorite. Davey Boy used to register under fake names in the hotel because he was so scared of Owen. Owen was a terror. I mean, a terror. Owen was so bad. People loved him. Some guys rib and they just get mad and people want to beat him up. Owen did it. People just thought it was funny. He sent, famously a bunch of the hogs into Vince's office one time. From Henry Godwin, they put all the pigs in the freaking office, and Vince's office is now covered in everything that pigs do. I used to wrestle with Owen and Davey on a loop, and it was so much fun. Davey Boy would call a spot, tackle, drop down, leapfrog. Owen would turn and call it to the crowd. Davey's going to do a tackle and a drop down and then a leapfrog. Watch. And you'd see him doing it. I told you.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. Davey Boy just thought it was funny. He loved Owen. Brett would get mad at Owen for screwing around, but it was so funny because Owen would go, I'm sorry, Brett. I didn't mean to do it. And you know what? Owen's going to do it again. Owen didn't care if it was Poughkeepsie in a live event or if it was WrestleMania. If Owen wanted to screw about, Owen screwed about. Owen was awesome. I tell you what Owen did one time. This almost happened to me on live television. We were somewhere in Canada, and the Heart Foundation was looking for Shawn Michaels, and they're going through the dressing rooms and stuff. Well, they didn't tell us they're coming into our dressing room, and so me and Barry Windham are in the shower, and butt naked as you are in the shower, and they come into our dressing room, and so Davey Boy looks in, and when he does, I see him, and I turn over, and I moon him. I'm butt naked. Owen thinks it's funny, and he goes, "Hey guys, Shawn's in there." I didn't have any idea we're on live television. My butt was almost on live television. So the camera goes to shoot me and Windham naked in the shower because Owen says, "Hey, they're in there." And Davey Boy at the last minute grabs the camera and pushes him the other way. Oh, my God. We almost had a heart attack. We were almost naked on live television.
Of course, we're hoping nobody gets naked this Saturday. It's Saturday night's main event. Goldberg is getting a world title shot, and we're going to be talking about it next week here on the program. John, if they were to bring back another legend, I'm not saying that Goldberg is not worthy of this opportunity, but I love the positioning that it's a legend from a bygone era that still resonates with fans, is still a draw, still has some name value, can still go physically, and they're doing it in his quote unquote hometown. Not really, but obviously Atlanta is such a big deal to his history and his story in pro wrestling. Is there somebody else out there like that? You think that, hey, that could be fun as one more title shot?
I see how Taker is in great shape right now, and you see him on his, Instagram and his social media stuff. He's in incredible shape, and he's working out a lot in real functional training. He's told me some stuff what he's doing, so I think he's probably in the best shape he's been in probably 15, 20 years. As far as because I know what the type of training he's doing. His body apparently feels pretty good. Taker could do something pretty dramatic, in the next year or so. And I would certainly enjoy watching that.
Man, can you imagine an Undertaker return? Wow, that would be something else, wouldn't it?
I would think it'd be a possibility. He looks great. I mean, he looks great, and he's in terrific shape. And I know the type of training. He's doing a lot of functional training, so his body's moving well. He's, not just, training, like going and doing some bench press and some squats, the old powerlifting lifts that we all did. He's actually doing functional training, so he's working out very hard. And so he can, I feel like he probably could still move as well as he's done for 20 years. I mean, I think that'd be great. I'd love to see him come back for something.
He's got a podcast with his wife, and I think on there at some point he has discussed that if he was going to get back in the ring, if there's one person on the roster right now who has his interest, who he thinks the Undertaker character could have matched up well with and created some in-ring magic, it's Gunther. Isn't that interesting that the Undertaker, the real life Mark Calloway, says, "Oh, I like Gunther," and that's who's wrestling Goldberg this weekend? That'd be something, wouldn't it?
It would be awesome. And the thing is, Gunther's an easy choice. He wouldn't be my choice because he's a heel. Right. But you need a big, tough guy that can wrestle, that knows his way around, and you need a guy that can get heat on Undertaker. You need, Undertaker's a big guy, and he looks great now, and he's still a really big guy. You need a guy like Gunther that can get heat on him. And so it makes perfect sense that Gunther would be the guy if Taker looking for somebody to come back. That would obviously not be a heel's choice like mine, but it would be somebody that it makes perfect sense for Taker.
Man, we want to hear from you guys. Let us know in the comments. If someone was to come back, would you want it to be The Undertaker? And if The Undertaker did come back, who would you want his return match, his return title shot to be against? Would it be Gunther? Let us know in the comments. We'll talk about it next week. We are going to be recapping what happened in Dallas this weekend.
So, wait a minute. First, who's your choice to come back?
You know, that's a great question. I really, if I'm honest with you, I had not even considered The Undertaker. Because they did such a big to-do about his final match, and that series they put out on Peacock on The Undertaker was fantastic. My wife, not a wrestling fan, had tears in her eyes watching it. I mean, it was a really important, special piece of footage to see The Undertaker reflecting on his career and talking. And the music video, that old Troubadour song that he loves so much, man, it brought a tear to Megan's eye, and she's not normally a big wrestling person. So I loved it, and it feels like it would be maybe tampering with that. Maybe there's a way to do it and not have that be the response. But me as a fan, and again, I'm a homer here, if one person's going to come out and get a title shot, I think it'd be pretty entertaining if we saw the return of JBL.
You never know.
You've been finding people. You've been practicing the leprechauns. If you step up to actual grown adult human men, I mean, we don't know what's possible, right?
We don't know what's possible. I've actually got a whole garage filled with wrestling mats. I've showed you pictures of it, wrestling dummies, Persian clubs that I'm using all the time. Briscoe and Jody Simon, Jody Malenko, have been my coaches. They're the most smart aleck coaches you've ever seen. All they tell me is how terrible I am. They're not one complimentary anything. I'll send them videos of me training with the suplex dummy out in the garage, which I've never done before. But they're training me by long distance. I am going to go down and do some training with Malenko and Charlie Haas, who's now a high school coach down around Tampa area. He's setting me up with some other guys, which I will say, I don't want to say the college. I'm going to train up with some All-Americans and some world champions in wrestling coming up. So I do have some training coming up, quite a few things, and I've got some world-class coaches that are helping me. So you never know. You never know what might happen.
Stay tuned, boys and girls. I'm hoping that he's going to warm that shoulder up, and I'm hoping we don't have to see anybody get duct taped to a ring post this weekend. But you never know what's going to happen. We're all going to be in Dallas this weekend. We'll hope you'll make plans to join us. We're talking about StarCast. It's happening this Friday and this Saturday in the suburbs of Dallas. It's the Arlington Sheraton. It shares the same parking lot as the Esports Arena where the Ring of Honor pay-per-view is. It's 2 blocks away from Globe Layfield where AEW has their all-in pay-per-view. And you can be a part of all the panels. You can get first crack at the meet and greets, and you're automatically registered when you purchase a bracelet to get a ringside floor seat upgrade for All In, and you get a backstage tour immediately following the show. You'll even be right up front for the press conference, and right after the conclusion of that press conference, you're going to get a personal meet and greet with Tony Khan. This isn't something for sale. This is literally something money can't buy. But it is available to you now. All you've got to do is make plans to join us at StarCast, pick up a bracelet, and you're automatically entered for a truly unforgettable wrestling weekend and experience. And what a crazy week it is, John. Just for wrestling fans, let's run through the abundance of riches we're blessed with. We get Raw on Netflix tonight, and then we've got NXT tomorrow night. On Wednesday night, we've got AEW Collision. On Thursday night, we've got Dynamite, and we've got I'm sorry, it was Dynamite. I'll get it right. Thursday's Collision and the TNA show, Impact. But then on Friday, not only do we have StarCast, but we've got SmackDown and we've got Ring of Honor. Come Saturday, we've got StarCast and All In and Saturday night's main event. And we finish it on Sunday with Evolution. This is the all-female pay-per-view in Atlanta. This really is like, oh, by the way, there's also a Great American Bash NXT pay-per-view. Like, how do we fit all of this in, John? There's so much wrestling this week. I mean, I know WrestleMania is obviously its own beast, but outside of WrestleMania, this is probably the biggest week of wrestling all year, don't you think?
It has to be. You think about what we talked about, especially during the Attitude Era. You had 3 great companies. You had ECW, you had WCW, and you had WWE. And those companies all went extinct except for WWE by the early 2000s. I know you brought ECW back, but it wasn't the same. And think about where you've come from there. WCW is gone. ECW is gone. You've got WWE, and that's it, basically. And now you've got this massive array of choices that you've got in wrestling. It's quite remarkable what's happened.
I can't wait to see it. I hope you guys are celebrating The biggest week of wrestling this year. We're going to talk about it next week. We're also going to be talking about Goldberg, his rise in WWE, and maybe what happens. What if we have a new champion? We'll talk about it next week right here on Something to Wrestle with John Layfield.